I just started recording.
Perfect. I am really nervous.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't be nervous. A lot of people are nervous.
Yeah. Mostly too that like I don't remember anything. I feel like we'll see. We'll see what I remember.
Everyone says that too.
Yeah.
And
well,
then,
okay, so I'm a huge fan. And I've listened to a bunch, but I haven't listened to all of them.
Okay.
And I felt like today I was listening to a couple and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm like cramming for a test. So I listened in the very beginning and like have hit a bunch like throughout the time, but it's all my intention to go back and listen to every single one. But I think it's awesome. And I don't really know what happened that I like got off sidetracked, but like every Monday I'd be like, oh, cool, there's another one.
The thing I think I like remember about you was like, first of all, you're probably like up there as far as like on my crush list.
Oh,
I have to tell you, yeah, you're up there.
Oh.
And the other thing I remember, but I never had classes with you, right? Because you were in all these like really smart classes.
Yeah.
So like that's the other thing.
I remember you from high school.
In what way though? Just being around, right? Just like a yeah.
Like knowing who you are and like you've referenced in some of like the earlier podcasts, like how you always had like a maybe not antagonistic, but like I don't remember any specific situation, but I remember you sometimes having like words with people. But like not in like a bad way. And I've never had like, it was like, I think some of the times that you were describing, like you, I don't have a specific person to say, but like something just didn't sit well or something. And whereas in high school, I would have like, I was so insecure. I would have just been like, okay. And like kept walking. You actually like stood up for yourself. That's what I remember. I remember you in plays. Okay. And like the TV world. You've talked about too, how you didn't think anyone knew you were half Jewish, but for some reason I knew that.
Really? Okay.
I don't know why.
Maybe like a middle school report or something like that I did, or.
Yeah. I don't know. I think also too, at some point I had to go through my mind, like getting to college, I met people that had like never met a Jewish person before. And I was like, really? Like there's, which I was like, so I like thinking about how I wouldn't say that my friend group was that diverse, but like compared to what I still like interacted with more people of a diverse background than other people that I experienced once I got to college. So just like it was like white preppy people. And so I was surprised at that. And so I think at that point I had to catalog. I was like, well, I definitely have gone to like bar and bat mitzvahs and we had to like think back like through like who would I have known this from or something. So yeah, I don't know if that was it, but
I definitely wasn't bar mitzvah though.
No, you weren't. Yeah. But like Corey Leshner was.
Mm-hmm. Like I remember Ben Wanger.
Yes. Oh yeah. Did he have one?
Yeah. Cause he's the one I remember where I thought like, if I ever had an in to go to one,
that was going to be it.
That was going to be the one.
I just remember, I think Andy too had like, you'd always get like t-shirts or something, or like it was like a party, but like there would be stations and stuff everywhere. So there was always like a t-shirt, like airbrush t-shirt station that they'd like write your name on or something.
I went to Elena's bat mitzvah.
Oh yeah. Maybe it was hers too. Yeah.
I'm trying something new here. I'm making a little tea because it's been like a rainy day here in Philadelphia. So I'm making a little tea and I threw some like leftover Fireball in it.
Oh, that actually sounds delicious. Like a American hot toddy.
Yeah. It's a lemon ginger tea.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Well,
I was gonna
honey
say you
and
just need
fiber.
like honey and just like drop a clove in or something. But I think
Yeah,
the cinnamon's better.
yeah. So I don't know. We'll see how this goes.
I'm having it is only 2 o'clock my time, but I was like, I can't do this without um alcohol. So this is like the most California thing. I have some wine, but this is super California, and I'm not even super California, but it's hard kombucha.
Oh, okay.
It's actually pretty delicious.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
fermented.
Yeah. I'm not super into kombucha all the time, but they
But when
got
you
me.
do,
They got me at the store. Yeah.
so Lizzie,
Yeah.
when did you start at Wissahickon? So first of all, you're the second twin now to come on the show
Yeah.
after Susie,
Yeah.
you and your brother Andy. So I don't know, part of this story I guess will cheat some of his background, but like
Yeah, for sure. I did
but
just tell him, I texted him, I was like, I'm doing the high school podcast, and he didn't know about it yet. So I told him all about it. So now he's like, oh, that's cool.
nice.
Yeah.
So when did you guys come to Wissahickon? Did you always start here?
Yeah, we were like all the way through. My parents even grew up in the area. My parents both went to Abington, but didn't know each other and met each other after, because it was a huge school. And then we were Bluebell Elementary the whole time.
You were voted most athletic.
Was I?
Yeah, I think you were.
So I don't have my yearbook. It's in like storage somewhere in Pennsylvania, I think, actually.
Yeah, I
So I
believe you
have
were.
no idea what like ridiculous quote I have or anything. I was voted most athletic.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that I played sports in college then, I guess.
See? So then when you were growing up, you and your brother, were you as twins, were you guys like friends growing up as kids?
Yeah, we were I guess. As much, yes, we were, of course. But Andy was more like my protector, and I was and still am. I've gotten way better at talking now. Now I feel like I talk too much. But as a kid, like I didn't talk at all, and I was so shy, and still like inside, I'm super shy and nervous all the time. Not all the time, but at least in like new situations or right now. But so for a long time, like he would speak for me and I wouldn't speak. My parents, this is obviously from what my parents have told us, they specifically put us into, we were maybe we were in kindergarten together, but then they specifically put us into like separate classes for the rest of elementary school so that we would like develop our own kind of identities more so. And I think they told my parents that I wasn't like socially developed enough, so that like, because I never talked. So they wanted to hold me back, and my parents were like, no, you can't separate twins, like that's going to make such a complex. So they didn't, and obviously it worked out okay. But by the time we got to, I don't think they did that with middle school, and we maybe were in the same pod sometimes, not all the time. But then by high school, there were only so many classes. Like we definitely had classes together all the time in high school.
Sure.
But growing up, yeah, like we would annoy each other and be friends and play with each other. You have like a built-in play person all the time. Yeah. But so like I had to watch G.I. Joe before like the bus in elementary school. Like there was no like Rainbow Bright or whatever else was, I don't know, My Little Ponies, I think I liked. Yeah. Played a lot of Micro Machines, Transformers, but
yeah, is it hard? Is that
what?
Hard to like develop like I don't know, when you say that I would almost go like, well, did you turn into like a tomboy, but were you able to develop like a girl identity, I guess, at a young age? Because not a lot of girls do that then. They just kind of like, whatever, if you don't complain, sure, let them do that. And
right. Yeah, I definitely felt like growing up, I was more tomboy-ish. I have two older brothers as well. So I'm the only girl. So there was always sports on, always like, but then, so lots of like boy type things, I guess. But like at the same time, since I was the only girl, there was also like, well, no, you're a girl. Like, no, you're not playing that with us, or you're not coming, or like, so I was excluded from certain things. But yeah, I still had like dolls and like did, I never liked the color pink, I guess. I don't know. Like, but I still had like girlfriends that we would do like dress up and like make believe and like that kind of stuff. And I'd have dolls and Barbies.
Yeah.
I think my Barbies played with like the G.I. Joes a lot. When we played together, we like, or like I had some girly Legos and would play like with the boy Legos too. So it was like a combo of both. But yeah.
The super mashup, the G.I. Joe and the Barbie.
G.I. Joe Barbie. It was like G.I. Joe fighting Ken. But yeah, so I mean, there was a good mix of stuff, I guess. But like, so growing up, I was just teaching my niece and nephew, or nieces and nephew, like field hockey. And my little nephew, like it's not, I mean, it's popular worldwide for men, but for men in the United States, it's really not a popular sport. But Andy would play all the time with me, like growing up, because I needed somebody to play against. And my dad, like, so that's like my dad, Andy, and he would like donate his time and play field hockey with us and be like a defender or something. So he also had to do non-boy things, I guess. we all grew up playing soccer. Like WRA soccer, and T-ball and softball and all that stuff. And the initial teams were all boys and girls anyway when you're young. So we would just be like on a little team together. And I only stopped playing soccer once I started playing field hockey, because they put them in the same season.
I only got soccer for 1 year, I think I played. So we didn't have soccer in Amblin. And we had to go. We had baseball, and we had.
But could you do like the WRA?
We could do WRA, but it took a few years for me to get over there. Like even with basketball, it probably wasn't until I started going to Shady Grove that we moved to WRA type sports. And even not with baseball, though, always did Ambler baseball.
Yeah.
And when I would go to WRA soccer, I hated it. Early soccer games, I think it's just the aspect of soccer early in the morning.
Super early in the morning. But like my favorite thing was the oranges. Someone always had to bring oranges at halftime.
See, in baseball, we had the snack bar. Baseball would always be afternoon games, right? Basketball would be nighttime games after school. And baseball.
I worked the snack bar in Lower Gwinnett.
You can get hot dogs or whatever there, right? That was great.
Chew.
All that for me, all the snack bar had in soccer was hot chocolate.
Oh, yeah. See, there was no snack bar in in WRA.
They had a little trailer.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, a little tiny trailer.
That was like basically nothing. Yeah, hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate. And that was like, I wasn't into the sport. The grass was wet. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, and usually by that point it's cold. But I don't know. So that was still a bonding. Like we would play. My dad would just. I think. Well, he was athletic. My mom was athletic too. But I think as having 4 kids, it was like, how can I tire them out so that when they come inside, it'll like be a little bit more calm and settled. So running around the yard, especially like a kid, you could just be like, I bet you can't run that fast over there. Like, and a kid will do it.
Do it again.
Right. Yeah. Now try it again. Okay. So I think that was an element of it, but for me, sports and stuff finally allowed me to be not as shy and like be like a little bit more confident. Probably that's really where, I mean, and obviously it opened a lot of other doors for me. it wasn't required. We always were interested in doing it, but like we always had to do something. So like you weren't just like idle, which in hindsight, I think was like super helpful for me to like be better in school and like have a structure and like be more regimented. I think it was really probably pretty influential in terms of like my success.
That's interesting
Whatever
because
success I've had, I guess.
well, no, I mean, the other thing I meant to tell you is that, you know, when I kind of like made a list of like people that I would love to have on the show, you were definitely, and I kind of alluded to this when I asked you if you would do it, was that I've been wanting to interview you. You were like top, like I kind of joke like a top 6. You were like on the top 6 because
Wow.
in my head, when I thought about like what this show could be, right? Super awkward for, you know, bullies and crushes and people you have these
Yeah.
weird interactions with, but also people who have businesses to promote, who have this like these interesting, you know, post high school lives, and people who are doing interesting things to talk about. And in my head, I was like, I would always say like, you know, like what's Lizzie Black doing? Isn't she like a heart surgeon? Like that's what I would say in my head and to
Yeah.
people when I would, or out loud when I pitch it to people.
Right. I
So
did go to
yeah.
medical school, but I am not a heart surgeon.
All right, we'll get there, but don't listen. Paige was the fastest girl in the world,
Yeah.
and for now, you're a heart surgeon.
Okay, perfect.
So you were in. This is when I think about. I always start like that. When I think about you, Lizzie, I always think like you were extremely studious, I guess, academic, very smart in a lot of the high level classes, but you were in the cool kid crowd. You hung out with very popular, pretty girls, and you played a lot of sports. So you were in kind of like the cool jock crowd of like the most popular. But in my head, you know, it's always tough to kind of line up the popular kids and the academic kids. I'm always so interested in, you know, the partying or whatever. And so in my head, I just go, well, when these kids were partying and having fun, was Lizzie just studying in the corner, or like, or was she, you know, I want to paint you as like a goody two shoes.
I mean, I kind of was in high school. So I like freshman year, I remember, so I made all the like varsity sports freshman year. So as like a little freshman coming in, it was like a saving grace, and not my brother, older brother, Brian, was a senior when we were freshmen.
Okay.
And so all the girls on the, like the seniors on the team and juniors knew who my brother was, and therefore knew that like I was the little sister.
Yeah.
And I was so naive. And I remember, I don't know if it was field hockey or lacrosse, but I think it was probably field hockey. I think it was Jill Posen would just try and get me to curse, because I would never curse. Now I curse like a sailor, but back then I like didn't say shit or anything. Like, and so that I remember we'd be doing like sprints, and she'd be like, Lizzie, just say shit. And I'd be like, shit. And then she would think it was amazing. Or like the one time I distinctly remember like not really wanting to say fuck, and then finally saying fuck at one point, kind of under my breath so no one would hear it. But yeah, I did kind of feel like a goody two shoes. Not that I felt like I was judging other people for what they were doing, but it just didn't fit for me. So like Paige alluded to, when I played basketball at the first 2 years of high school, and then indoor track the last 2. We would have track meets for indoor track. So every Friday night, like on a bus for 3 or 4 hours to Lehigh or wherever. So like I wasn't at any party then. And I guess I would go to football games because my brother would be playing too, but that was always during my season as well. I was always in a season. But I did get arrested. And
wow. Didn't see that coming.
And put in a paddy wagon. So
in high school?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Sophomore year. It was like, I was, yeah, pretty devastated. Um,
What were you doing?
uh,
How were you Breaking Bad?
right. Yeah. Um, it was, who had a party? Some junior had a party over spring break.
Hmm.
And so I was friends with a lot. So since I was playing sports,
Right.
well, and all the, like with all the varsity sports with juniors and seniors, and I guess some sophomores at that point. This was sophomore year, so it was the juniors. Um, I think it was spring break, and somebody had a party, and I couldn't even drive yet, so I got picked up and drove around, and then somebody wanted to go to the party, so we dropped them off, and we are like, oh, this looks sketchy, because it was like, classic like like a high school party where the house is completely dark, somebody's supposed to be away on vacation, and then there's like 25 cars parked like 3 blocks away, that like it was just like just far enough to be sketchy. So we
No,
left.
Lizzie, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I didn't really either. So because I did like the dumbest thing ever and got myself caught when I didn't even drink or do anything.
Oh,
So I think they actually ended up changing the rule because my dad complained. But so we drove around, we dropped somebody off at the party. We had to pick them back up because they needed to get home because it was still, so we went back to the party. Like, I think we went to a pizza place. There were 3 of us, dropped the 4th person off at the party, drove around, went to like a pizza place, did whatever. Come to be like almost 11 o'clock. Everyone has to be home by like maybe 11:30 at the latest. So we got to go pick the person up at the party. And none of us wanted to be like the only person to go back and maybe get in trouble. So we all went in. But then I was like, I'm going to stay by the door. And like the other 2 people went into the party to try and find the person to be like, hey, we're here. Come on, let's go. Sure enough, within like 2 minutes, I'm standing by the door.
someone comes by.
Police just knocked the door down. I basically like welcomed them into the house. And so I was like, I can't run. Like, I'm literally right here. Whereas like the rest of the party was like a floodgate out. And then I have never been so scared in my life. And just was like, I don't think I cursed then, but like I was like silently rocking to myself, like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck.
Your life is over.
It was, yeah. And it wasn't, but it still was like pretty traumatic and terrible, and was put into like, I feel like not the correct term, but like a van, right? Like what everyone calls a paddy wagon, but that's insensitive to my, I guess, Irish people.
Okay.
But like, like steel benches. So they put all the girls into the wagon, and boys, what?
Like a transport vehicle.
Transport vehicle. Yeah. Like one of those, like it kind of looks like what they transport, like money, like a money in, but yeah.
Yeah, like an armored vehicle. Yeah. The bars on the windows, benches on, you sit.
Yeah, it's like all just like steel, and yeah, it's terrible.
Get in there.
Yeah. So they put all the girls into that, and I think all the like boys were put into cars, and they kept them separate. But the funniest thing was, so since I was like basically caught right at the very beginning, the cops were like all yelling, and they corralled everybody into like one of the rooms of the house and sat us down, and then like slowly started to bring other people in. So it was like the really drunk kids that were passed out in the top of the house or like top bedrooms, they woke them up and brought them down, and they were just like, what's going on? People out of breath that like tried to run away and got caught, and so they would come back in, and then they had us all go around and tell us, say like where we lived, what was our name, and how much we had to drink. And so they got to me, and I was like, Lizzie Black, like there, Evans Road, and nothing. And they were like, we will find out if you've had anything to drink. And I was like, I haven't had anything to drink. And they hated me, and they thought I was lying. Then they like lined us up, and we all had breathalyzers, and somebody like spit out pennies and was like, here, do you guys want some? They don't work. Because I guess some wives' tale was like, if you have copper or pennies or something in your mouth, like it messes up the breathalyzer. But the dude blew quite high, I think, on the breathalyzer. So yeah, but I got kicked off the lacrosse team.
Oh.
Yeah. So everyone was immediately suspended that had been at the party and drinking.
Yeah, that was the rule, right? Like they would tell you in the beginning when you first got to high school, and like if you do sports, if you get caught hanging out with drinking, you're off the team.
Right. And so this was like, I was getting really into lacrosse. It was sophomore year. We were doing really well. And so that's why I chose to like not stay at the party and like leave. I was like, this isn't worth it. It was spring break. And we were still had to be around for practice and like, I think only practice during spring break. But yeah, so I think this is why my dad fought and they eventually changed the rules because I made all the decisions that you would like want your kid to make sure somebody doesn't drive home drunk. Don't drink at the party, but like be responsible for other people and like help them and be big enough to be like, no, I don't want to drink that. And I'm not going to stay. And I still got, right. So they were still debating. Yeah. So eventually though, I think like parents complained and were like, well, our kids got kicked off. So me and it was Alexis Heyman. She is a class above us. Now married to Eric Malhorn.
Right.
We both got caught and hadn't been drinking and they weren't going to kick us off initially and maybe just like suspend us for a couple games. And I think people complained, which is still pretty messed up to this day. I'm like, you guys were wasted at the party. And I had to stand in front of the entire team and look at people that I knew that were wasted at the party and got away. And I had to apologize to them and say, I'm sorry I did this and made a wrong decision. And I got kicked off. Yeah. I was like so bitter by like writing, like applying to colleges. I had to leave off like lacrosse year 10. Yeah. So I did despite being a goody two shoes, it was dumb and naive and got arrested.
I was looking at the yearbook and I was going to aggressively ask you as a joke, why didn't you stick with lacrosse in 10th grade?
Oh yeah, that's why. I was sticking with it. It's probably one of the reasons actually though, that I didn't end up playing lacrosse in college. Cause I didn't so the end of my season and like your sophomore year is like a big recruiting time. And I think I still went that year and played like in a national tournament and stuff and did other stuff, but you just don't get as much exposure. And I just was not as into it then. Whereas like field hockey, then I kept playing the whole time. But yeah.
When you were growing up and you were, doing girl stuff and who were your friends during that time, like before you kind of got to high school as a kid?
Yeah, it changed a lot. My like best friend growing up was Julia Preston.
Yeah.
And Molly Foose, probably like elementary age. Molly, they both lived like super close.
Yeah, is that due to your neighborhood?
Yeah. So I lived on Evans Road, like the other side of Evans Road. Alicia Conti was like on the other side by Gwen and Mercy College. And I became even closer then with Katie Eveland. And so I was friends with Katie before too, but even closer with Katie and Molly. I remember hanging out with Rebecca Elwork, who also lived, like Natalie Kunert some. I think Leslie some in 5th grade, right when she moved. I have a distinct memory of doing like dances during 5th grade recess with pocket rockers. Did you remember what it was like? A little cassette tape that like had 2 songs on it. It was like the first like mobile, like,
but it was about
this big. Yeah. And it was definitely not feasible. Like it was this big, but then like all the tapes were like this big and they only had 2 songs on them. So you would have had to have carried around like a bajillion, but we had a couple songs that we would do dances to, which like the fact that I even like, I can't believe I even did that because I feel like I would have been too embarrassed to, but,
Songs.
so I don't know who was involved in all that, but Natalie probably, Caitlin Kelly, Leslie, Katie,
You remember the songs?
Melissa Morgantan. Oh, I think we're alone now.
Yeah, Tiffany.
Tiffany Amber. No, yeah,
No,
Tiffany.
Just Tiffany.
Just Tiffany. I'm thinking of Kelly Kapowski. Is Tiffany Amber
Yeah,
Thiessen, right? Yeah, just Tiffany. That was one that, like, still to this day, I'm like, oh, I love that song.
I do like that song.
Yeah. So, but I don't really. So, and they also hung out with like Eric Melhorn and Chris Moss because those were two of Andy's best friends. Eric Melhorn lived on Summitown Pike, right by William Penn Inn, and what now is Folkways.
Oh yeah.
Before, like when we were growing up, Folkways didn't own all of that yet. I think actually maybe Folkways bought his parents' house, and then he moved over to Ambler. And Chris Moss, and Steph Schneck, they lived on like off of Gypsy Hill Road. Yeah. So still close by, and like
I actually remember that.
Yeah, I'm impressed. So I would hang out with them if I was like allowed to play, like if he had people over. So I think that was the other thing that made if I was in like the cool crowd, it was probably mostly because of my brothers.
Well, you know, that's
and what? Yeah.
Well, that's often what I say, like, you know, the groups are very incestuous, and so you just need like one in.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, and like you said, you kind of had a built-in, you know, buddy growing up, but you also had like a built-in that while you're studious, it was like, well, yeah, of course, we love Lizzie. Lizzie's Andy's sister.
Right. So I could like go to the party if I did go to a party, which I didn't really in high school. I remember like drinking a couple times after some dances, something like that. But the only time, like, I was definitely more of a rule follower, and especially after, you know, getting kicked off the lacrosse team sophomore year, I was like, it's not worth it to me. So I was probably even less so. However, that spring I got drunk for the first time. Once they kicked me off the team, I was like, well, screw you guys. I did like the most like basic and classic, like high school. I went to a Dave Matthews concert. It was that spring, like later that spring. I got a ride from somebody, was in the parking lot like of the Vet, right? It was probably at the Vet then still.
Or the Vet, or was it the Tweeter Center?
No, I think this one was like at the Vet, not the Camden, not the Camden one. I don't think. Okay. I think this was like a really big one, and it was 3 nights, and I think I went 2 nights. And the first night I had like 3 beers and I was wasted. Only because I was like, well, what else? Like, I was like, I already got kicked off my lacrosse team, and It was like a Saturday or something. So, but then otherwise I didn't drink or do anything. So I do remember maybe in middle school, people would go to the movies all the time and then say they were going to the movies, but then walk over to where like there was Chuck E. Cheese and where now Whole Foods is, but what I don't remember what it was before. What?
Fresh Fields.
Oh yeah, Fresh Fields. That's it. And then they would like smoke and hang out on the other side. And like the first time I went, I think I was like, oh, are we going to watch the movie? And then, so I just like stand out and like hang out. And like people would always like offer and be like, do you want to smoke? I'd be like, nope. And no one ever, and maybe someone had alcohol and like it would be offered, but like if I said no a couple times, people would be pretty respectful. And like it wasn't I don't know, they just weird. Like,
did you sometimes people have a hard time dealing with people in that mind space when they're not partaking? As a kid, was that it was all just you're still hanging out with your friends even though your friends are probably getting a little bit shit-faced? Or was it annoying? Or did you have a different group of friends that you like to be with that could help offset some of those times?
Yeah, I think so that was probably middle school-ish time. And I think I just like stopped doing that as much. So like, but I felt like in middle school, you could like, if you had a birthday party or something, it was like, here's like 100 people that you have to invite to your birthday party. It was this like giant group of people. And then that started to kind of pare down in high school, like, and be like a little more cliquish. But I never felt like, well, like I never, like, no one was ever mean to me or anything. Like I didn't feel comfortable. And I just kind of felt like I was like there to like say I was there, or maybe because Andy was going or something. Cause then I was just like, well, what am I hanging out like outside, not smoking or whatever, and not watching a movie? So that ended pretty quickly. And then I started to just have so many sports that like I couldn't, I never was smoking because like I was like, I use my lungs every day. Like that would be silly. And then I think after the one party incident from sophomore year, despite the fact that like not drinking or anything, like I just like, it just wasn't like, so I would like at that point, I think things started to like splinter off a little more. And I hung out with Molly and Katie like all the time. But then Katie at one point was dating somebody that was a year above us. So anytime I feel like that we dated or somebody dated somebody that was like older, there was more parties and stuff. So I definitely went to a Pimps and Hoes party, I remember. And had to wear something like that probably wasn't even that risque, but I felt like totally exposed and super self-conscious. And I probably didn't really drink either. So I don't know. I couldn't imagine right now being like the sober person and hanging out with people that are getting wasted, but I guess I did that for a while. Once I got to college, I didn't. And then in the summer times, we would go to the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
And everything was legal there. Well, maybe not technically, but like no one was. So we would drink in the summertime.
Okay.
But I still would like wake up to go run. So I don't know.
Were you aware? It sounds like you're aware of it now, but were you aware of it then, of like kind of like that stereotype of being like the nerdy girl or
yeah. Because I was like, sorry.
I watched a lot of, again, like a lot of 90210.
Oh yeah, I did too.
So Andrea Zuckerman is and you had the glasses, right? You had glasses back then.
I had glasses. I still do. They're just not on right now.
Yes, take it back.
And I was so self-conscious of my glasses. And I think I got them in 6th grade just to like see the board. And then, so I would take them off. Like I would try and put them on, like once I sat down so people wouldn't see me put them on. And then I would like leave them on for the class. And then I would try and take them off quickly, like pack them up and like not have them on in the hallway. And same thing in high school. I still didn't wear them that much. Or maybe I wore them a little bit more, but I finally got contacts and realized like how much I was missing. Because I would always take my glasses off and just be like, oh yeah, I think that's like, I remember playing sports for the first time with my contacts and I was like, oh gosh, I can see their faces. Like I can see so many more things like happening. So I finally started wearing contacts, but yeah, they're still, so I was for sure the nerdy one. Andy was the outgoing one. And then especially as twins, like, I feel like we were labeled like, you're the nerdy twin. Andy's like the outgoing twin. Meanwhile, like Andy is just as smart, if not smarter than me. Like he just didn't care all the time about like at school. He would just go to bed at like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to keep working. Well, also because it would take me so much longer to do stuff. He would be done stuff in like 2 seconds. I would take forever.
Well, that's probably also a little bit of a little like section or gender bias. That's the word.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Like no one ever says anything about smart guys, but Leslie talked about, feeling like she didn't want to, feeling like she couldn't be the smart one because, she felt like guys maybe would be threatened or.
Oh, and I felt like that all the time.
Being a smart
Between
girl is a
being
negative.
what? Yeah, oh, it was a
Smart
complete
girl's a
negative.
negative. Yeah.
Between being good at sports, that like hit a lot of people's egos. I remember in middle school more because like particularly middle school, like boys are so not developed compared to girls. Like kickball in middle school gym, like I'd kick it farther than the boys. And whoever didn't have like a strong sense of their self, like would make some sort of comment about me being like a man or something.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know. I feel there was a couple other times in middle school that I felt uncomfortable. And I always felt uncomfortable. But I always felt like I was like the dorky one. And people kind of just like entertained me because I either they had older siblings that knew my older siblings or Andy. And then I think I felt more comfortable around a bunch of the boys that then would become like maybe more popular, that like they were like other brothers to me from growing up and playing with them.
Sure.
That it didn't ever feel like I don't know, I wasn't uncomfortable around them, but I was around other boys. So, and I never thought like, I always thought like, I felt like I definitely had crushes on boys, but like, I felt like people viewed me in a very like asexual way. Like I definitely, because I was like the nerdy whatever one. Or I always thought like if anyone claimed that they liked me, that they were doing it to mess with my brothers.
Oh yeah.
So because I feel like sometimes they were probably trying to mess with my brothers and maybe other times it was for real.
Hey, I
But
love your sister. I'm gonna ask out your sister. Shut up,
right.
man.
Or like make comments about like I particularly remember indoor track because we would have spandex on. So like, yeah, like, I don't know. So I definitely didn't date in high school, although I did go on one date. I can't remember if it was freshman or sophomore year. And it was, uh, Grant Whitaker, who, Pete Whitaker's older brother, Pete Whitaker in our class.
Older than JC? I only know Pete.
No,
and JC.
JC was my brother's age, Brian. So he was a senior when we were freshmen. Grant was a junior.
There's a middle Whitaker.
Middle Whitaker. Yeah. And we went to a movie. He picked me up and we went to a movie. And I think I was so insecure. I was like, he can't like me. Even though he like asked me out and we went to a movie, I think I was like still so awkward afterwards. Like that was it. Like we went to a movie and I was just like, okay. And like super awkward. Interestingly though, I think I had like a huge crush on him.
Yeah.
But like, I just like couldn't. Yeah.
So for you, I mean, I guess it's the same because all the same things as far as like the parties and stuff, because you were so busy that I guess it wasn't like you were sitting at home going, I wish it was on a date, because generally you had stuff to do anyway.
Right.
But I guess, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have the one date, but I was in a similar way, didn't date at all, but none of my friends did either. Right. So it wasn't in my world. What's that like for you though, to see like, you know, your friends all kind of, especially when, right, we talk about the groups being intermingled, and I imagine most people are intermingled because of who they're dating, right? Their boyfriends, friends, and all that. All of your, well, not all, but your intermingling comes from your brother's friends versus versus a boyfriend. Right. What's that like for you?
Yeah, I think there was some mingling because like Katie dated someone in the class above us.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I guess like seeing that you're not in that space. I don't know. I would always say that like I wasn't mature enough for it regardless, but
yeah, I think I wasn't. Like I was way too insecure. I couldn't wrap my head around like somebody liking me. Like, I was just like, there's no way. Like, or I would rationalize it in the other way. Like, so I think most of my friends, well, so I think though, like with high school dating, it's still just like so many people hang out together that, and there's still so much apart time that like, even when Katie was dating someone, we still played sports together and she would drive me home, or she would still come hang out and we would still hang out on our own. And you didn't spend every waking moment with the other person. Or I think that's like when I went to the Pimps and Hoes party, like it was like someone in the junior class, nor maybe when we were juniors and they were, I don't know what year it was, but like going to some parties that were yeah, I guess from like sports and or from dating. Sorry, I just started to remember that I hung out with Katie Kulik a lot growing up.
Yeah.
And then her older brother would have parties and stuff.
Chris Kulik.
Yeah. Yeah. And they lived fairly close to us too. But
I just had very similar experience in that way. And I had the same feelings, that feeling of like awkwardness. And like, even like when I did start dating in college, of like, and even today, like, it's like, they don't really like, oh, she really likes me. Like, she doesn't really like me, does she? I still feel like do you feel like you ever got over that?
So it took me a long time. I didn't really, so I maybe like made out with some people in high school, but not, I don't think even really. And just was like always feeling awkward. I got to college and still didn't necessarily think people would like me, but that was the first time. It was very interesting. And I think I struggled a little bit, not being like, it was the first time I was not Andy's sister. And like coming up with my own identity. And like, so I feel like I did miss out on a ton of stuff in high school, like my going to Keystone games and like doing lots of, because I would play like field hockey in the wintertime and the springtime and the summertime and the fall. And then I would have lacrosse things at other times. And then I also did indoor track and I did like everything else during those times. So like sometimes after like indoor track practice, I would go play indoor field hockey for like 3 hours in Downingtown. Wow. And then like have to come back and on a weeknight or something, or anyway, but like, so I was constantly busy enough that like, there were some times that I could go out and do something, but like still was like very much in like a little bubble. But every time my parents took me to something, like my brothers could have parties. So I was like the facilitator for them. But so then I would say the Dominican Republic and like spending time there, that first was like the first foray into like feeling like a more social person. Even though I was social in high school, but like I was fine like hanging out, like eating food and watching movies with like Katie and Molly and doing something ridiculous, like playing pool, talking to people. We went to parties and stuff too. But college, I was like, man, I just spent like so many years like working so hard. I still had field hockey, but I was just like, is like the academic part is like useful. Like, and I in college was like super social all the time, which I guess is surprising for people too at, because it's Princeton, like that people wouldn't go out and party, but like it was the most intense partying. Like you'd go to like the library until it was like 11, and then you'd take like 5 shots and then go out and like party until like, so I on multiple occasions like left my computer in the library and got drunk and forgot about it. But because it was also Princeton, like I could find it there the next day and it'd be like, thank God my computer's still here.
Wow.
Yeah. but then like during my season, I wouldn't. So yeah, but it still took like, I didn't date that much in college either. Cause I still think I struggled with the same, like, I was like, oh, they're not interested.
Getting over it.
And it took a long time I never really dated anybody in college. Cause in college for us, it was like, either you were like married to the person or you kind of hooked up with somebody a little bit. And then like, it was like maybe a little bit of a thing, but you wouldn't necessarily call it like dating. I don't know. It
That
could have
sounds like
still
high
been,
school.
what?
That sounds like high school or middle
Oh
school.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. It was so weird. It was weird. But
Did
I
you
also
just hang
don't know
out?
that.
You just hang out at the lockers at Princeton?
Well, the eating clubs. It sounds even more pretentious. Yeah, the eating clubs. So, which is like, so it's like a co-ed. The best description is like a co-ed frat.
Okay.
So there are these big, beautiful mansions, and they're all on one street. And like the eating club I was a member of is a historical, like it's a historical landmark.
Okay.
I think F. Scott Fitzgerald started writing like this side of paradise in it. So we have like F. Scott Fitzgerald memorabilia, and like anytime a drunk person would like break a light bulb, you have to get it like specially reordered because it's a historical landmark. So it has to match like stuff. And then all these big, beautiful houses had tap rooms. So your freshman and sophomore year, all you needed to get into them was your school ID. So it was like underage drinking like heaven. You just needed your school ID. And since it was private property and like there were no immediate like residential areas, the police couldn't come in unless like somebody called the cops on them, but no one did. And then you join them your junior and senior year, and you actually ate all your meals there. And then like there was a library at mine, but it was like a social gathering part. No one lived there except for the officers.
Okay.
So but yeah, so you would just like see people out at them. And it became like this weird, so because Princeton was not that much bigger. It is bigger, but like it's not that big of a college.
Right.
So you still would walk around campus and be like, oh, I recognize that person. Or especially I think like, since I was still in like the sport world, like you start to recognize lots of people from different sports, which kind of got you into different, I don't know, different other things.
Yeah.
But I still never like, you'd hang out with somebody at an eating club, or maybe you make out on a dance floor, but like, I didn't really date anybody. And then I continued to not really date anybody for like a long time. Right after college, I finally had like a first real boyfriend when I lived in New York.
Okay.
But even then it was like too much. I was like, oh, you're amazing. And he was really great. But he was like older and in a different spot than I was. And I was like, I can't handle this right now. And I was like, okay, I'm done.
Do you feel I've recently had people comment on like my relationship statuses from time to time, or the way that I look at things. And I've had someone recently criticize the way that like I look at relationships, and sometimes
how do you look at them?
I think I look at them kind of like a mixture of like real life experience, but like still very like stereotypical or dream worldy, of like not necessarily what's realistic, but what I want to happen. In the same way that like if you have a dream for a job, oh man, I could do this job, but I'd really love to do this job. I do the same thing with like relationships. It's like, well, sure, I'm dating this girl and that's cool, but my dream is to date this girl or to marry this girl.
Grass is always greener or something.
Yes, but I guess just certain attributes that I'm trying to find and match up that I feel like I'll know when it's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have I think probably I have the highest standards for myself, which is both good and a bad thing. But like being successful before, like in school, was never like my parents being like, you have to do well and whatever. It was just like, try your best. So I think I just hold myself to a high standard, and I therefore then, particularly people like immediately around me, I have extremely high expectations of like, maybe too high, I don't know, but I think I never it's a combination of like having high standards and also not really knowing what I wanted yet. Like, do you really know exactly what you're looking for? Because I have changed probably I don't know, like each stage of my life, there's been a different thing where I've like, okay, this is interesting to me, and like it's good for a little while, but then like I'm like, wait, is this really who I want to be and what I want for the rest of my life? And I struggled with that for like a major in college, for figuring out even like going to college, like what I was going to do, what I've been doing after college. Like I just like, I don't want to be pigeonholed into something. And I feel like that also, I was afraid of that as well with relationships, and not ready to like commit to that. And it took until 37.
Still going.
Yeah, still, yeah. So it's been a long, and I still think I'll probably struggle with that like for life.
Right.
But it probably wasn't until like late 20s that I finally was like, oh, I think I want to have kids eventually. Or like, I want to have, like, I could even see myself getting married. Like, I didn't even think about that. I also didn't even think about going to college until I started getting like recruiting letters. And I was like, all right, I have to go to college.
So then while you're playing all these sports, and you're really good academically, I mean, for you academically, let me ask that first, like being good at schoolwork. I know people have talked about like liking school, about, working hard, and whereas you say like Andy would go to bed, you would stay up. Is that something you
yeah. Oh my gosh. But I also
achieve?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but also like Andy did work really hard.
But he wouldn't push it, and he would go to bed.
I would push it much more, right? Yeah, but I just
were you conscious of like, I need to achieve some sort of a certain academic standard?
I was very focused back then on doing my best, and like I knew though that like if I had studied, like I needed to know everything like perfectly. I want like so many perfectionist tendencies that I'll be working on getting like pushing aside for the rest of my life as well.
Yeah.
But I really was focused on like I didn't get anything special for having like all A's. We would go to like the William Penn Inn for brunch. Like that was it, which we loved doing. But like it wasn't like I was getting straight up money or like anything. Like my parents are both teachers, like they worked really hard. So I think that was part of it. Like I just have always been very curious, love to learn new things. And the focus was on like trying your best and like doing the best that you can. And I felt really bad when I knew that I could have done better and didn't, or made like a silly mistake because like it wasn't showing how good I could do on like a test or something. But so I was probably the driving force of that. And my parents were like super supportive and like, like we want you to focus on school and sports and trying to make that like as simple as possible for us. And really giving up like so much of their own time and everything for us to be successful. But I don't know. I don't think I actually answered your question.
Well, no, you did. While you were doing that, I guess, was it like I don't know, I guess like, did you have, it sounds like you were doing it just to do good in school. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So and like you said, you didn't even think about going to college until you were getting academic. So for you, there was no connect between.
I didn't even think I was like that good at field hockey or lacrosse.
But academically, there was no connect between like, if I do well, I guess like my next question would be, did your parents go to college?
Yeah, so they both went to college. They both have my mom's a nurse, but teaches, she taught nursing at Gwinnett Mercy College. And my dad taught at Gwinnett Mercy College, but he's a high school teacher, but then also taught in college. He was a Spanish teacher. We had to do, like, my parents made us like, so that we had to try our best, had to be good people, and had to be, that was it, basically. Like, try your best and be a good person. And I think I took that to like an extreme, maybe. But it was without really, I'm a people pleaser. Like, I think it was more just like, okay, this makes everybody happy around me, and a part of me happy too, because I like seeing like my parents proud of me, and I like seeing, I think it also helped too that like my closest friends were also along the same wavelength.
Right.
Not that we competed, but like they weren't going to give me shit if I was like, I got to do my project. Like, I can't hang out tonight. I got to do my project or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
that's something I often think about. I've said many times that my friends weren't really making a plan for college necessarily. A lot of my friends were looking to work after college to make money after high school, looking to make money. And I often wonder how much, if I would have been better at getting into college if I had that, and my parents didn't go to college. So it was like, you got to go, but I didn't feel like I had the tools equipped to prepare myself to do that until I got a year or two into community college.
Yeah.
Then it was like, oh, okay, now I kind of see like what you need to do and the way you need to, I felt like I was kind of playing catch up. So I guess,
I was super fortunate.
But I mean, even though, so for you, like, it wasn't, I guess, what did you think you were going to do? What did you want to do? Like when you're 16, 15-year-old Lizzie, you're playing lots of sports, but you're not getting recruiting letters, and you bust your ass academically, and it's really important to you, but just because you notice that that's what is hoped for you.
Yeah. And I like to learn too. So it's a combination of that, but,
so what did you think then, prior to like a future of like, I need to apply myself? What did you want to do?
I don't know. I have often thought about that, because I do remember like receiving, so you can start getting recruiting letters, like the spring of your sophomore year, maybe, no, junior year. And so like, obviously, like I have two older brothers, they both went to college. So I think it was kind of like, it was like a given, like, oh, I'll go to college, but I didn't actually envision it. It was just like, and I almost wish, like, it's what I try to, if I'm like meditating or like doing yoga or something now, like I was so in the moment of like, this is just like, all I'm focusing on is what I have to do, and not kind of worrying about the other like bullshit around. And I feel like I get caught up in that more now as an adult than I did back then. But I think it was, I think I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be, a veterinarian. I wanted to be something that helps somebody. Like very, very, like very trite, like, and it sounds ridiculous, but like, even like applying to medical school, I was like, you're supposed to have this like magical moment of like, when like the calling came to you to like be a doctor. And I was like, I just want to help people. Like, I like helping people. And like, I find the human body to be fascinating. Like, it's an amazing machine. But yeah, so I don't think like, I mean, there was no like magical, so the biggest debate for me I had, as a kid, I think being a vet was a big thing, and maybe a doctor. I was weirdly obsessed with like The Hot Zone. Did you ever read that book?
No.
Probably not. And like Robin Cook novels, which were like medical thrillers. Um, and I don't even remember when I read those, but like The Hot Zone was about the Ebola virus and is like basically the movie Outbreak, but like what happened really in the United States. And
So
I
you're ready
remember
to
reading
go.
what?
So you're ready to go.
Right. Yeah. And I was just like,
Prepared your
this
whole
is
life.
awesome. Yeah. And I don't know why. My mom's a nurse. My grandmother was a nurse. But there was like multiple nursing.
Yeah, I guess like, did you, yeah, it was, did you, I grew up wanting to be an astronaut until I found out that you can't be an astronaut if you're colorblind. Right. So like,
I'm like, I'm not that good at math. I'm like, I can't. They'd be like, quick, solve this equation. I'd be like, I need my TI 83.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, but are you colorblind?
I am colorblind. So I can see colors, but I can't see shades.
Okay.
So the common, which a lot of people,
green, right? Green usually.
Greens and blues, and then there's certain times, blacks and yellows. So I like to wear a lot of like wild colors, but blues and greens are the hardest.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Is your dad colorblind?
My grandfather.
Okay. I was gonna say, because it's
hereditary on your mom's, right? It's your mom's side, isn't it? I thought.
Yes, I believe it is. Because I think it's found on your X chromosome, and it's not usually found in girls because girls have a second one, like a backup, and you don't because you have a Y.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's on your X somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, my grandfather and my mom's dad was colorblind.
Okay, yeah.
So I used to not be able to, like, you had a thing where you couldn't read the board. I used to not be able to. I had a teacher, I want to say it was Mrs. Gavin. It could have been Mrs. Gordon back in the old Madison Avenue days.
Oh yeah.
And we, one of the teachers used to like write on the board with like blue and green chalk on the board.
Really?
And I couldn't see it. And I would just like, I don't know what this all is. And
did you ever tell them?
Yeah. So eventually it was like, I can't really see it. And I went to the doctor and they gave you that book where you match out the patterns, the numbers, and I couldn't see a thing.
Oh, wow.
I'm
pretty unnerving. Like, what was going through your mind as a kid?
I never knew. It was much tougher like in my 20s.
Okay.
And I was responsible for buying my own clothes. And right then you're like,
does this match?
I remember when I moved to Stamford to go to WWE, I had to travel a lot. So you had to wear like business wear. Ups and slacks and coats and stuff. And so I remember getting clothes, and my mom like did all the different matches. Like, this coat will match all these different pants. And like, I lined them all up and I took pictures of all of them so that every week when I was packing for the road, I could look and go, okay, I can do this jacket and these pants and this shirt.
Like, have it set out before. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had like 8 different combinations in my phone to go through, to look through, so that I knew what matched. And it took a long time it took my 20s of actually planning, paying attention, and recognizing to say, okay, now at least I know, these colors go together, because I would just no fucking clue.
No, yeah. No, that's challenging. I can't remember what brought us to that, but
well, I was originally asking about like a passion, if you wanted to, if there was anything that you wanted to go to school for, but you said, your mom was a nurse, and so doctor, but veterinarian.
Yeah, so that was probably like my biggest thing. I mean, I was like, so I guess it's good and bad. Like, I was, I mean, you've put me into like the cool kid crowd, but like, I'm a huge nerd. And
but so was Paige, right? Like, a lot of that's right. The interesting thing that
which is why we were really good friends. And like Leslie, like we were in the same, like Leslie and I were in the same classes, and Paige was in the same classes, and we would be on the track bus together for forever. And Katie and Molly are also like, I mean, I guess everyone has their own element of nerdiness. Mm-hmm. You just have to find your like nerdiness. Like Katie, Molly, and I would be silly all the time. And like, there was enough of a camaraderie, I think, and similarity that it was supportive between like Colleen and Brooke and
Right.
I don't know, everyone, like between sports and classes together, like everyone was kind of still on the same general path of like trying to do their best and like being supportive, and like it just kind of lent itself to like, I think that's why, I mean, it's like why people self-segregate and whatever, right? Like you find your people that like you're kind of similar to, and for good or for worse, right? Like because I mean, I just named all the white people.
Well, I was going to ask you because you started off earlier by talking about the diversity in school, and then you went to and it's funny because our school was diverse, and Will Laval, who has done an episode but it hasn't aired, but one of the things that he did talk about, which I think is fine to say, was that when he transferred schools, he came because he kind of wanted a different experience, and I kind of asked him about it a few times. And I think it took him a little bit to say, but I think what he was trying to get to was, diversity, minorities, different class structures. But still, and this is something that I do go back to a lot. And I ask people is, who'd you hang out with? And often, and it's as I remember it a lot of times. And I think athletics is probably one of the easy ways for people to have been able to break out of that mold of hanging with the all white crew or the all black crew.
Yeah.
So I don't know, the difference. What was that like for you? I guess because you did hang out with like mostly white kids, right? And like you just said, like you just named all these white kids who are,
right.
And that, I don't think my issue was race, but I do think there is something to the fact that most of my friends were, wanted to work, and I didn't really have anyone in my world to help guide me onto here's what you need to do if you want to go to college. My parents. Right. Not that my parents didn't have the opportunity, but that just wasn't their world.
You're an only child, right?
And an only child, so I didn't see it from older siblings.
Right. Like I had the advantage of, well, one, my parents did go to college and were teachers, so they were focused on like doing well in school or trying your best. But I then had two older brothers that like went through all of that. That, I mean, I was just an advantage for me for sure. And I'm sure that's why older siblings always have like a chip on their shoulder about like, I paved the way for you. And like, yeah, you did. Thanks. But yeah, in terms of diversity, so I think like obviously sports gives you exposure to more diverse groups of people. And between like field hockey and lacrosse are way less diverse of sports.
Right.
But I played basketball and lacrosse and indoor track, which definitely like I was so excited to. And I haven't listened to Jess's podcast yet, but I've listened to a lot of like, because she's a police officer, right? In Oakland.
Yeah. In Alameda County.
Yeah. And so I've like not on Instagram, maybe on Facebook, have been like listening because she did that whole series of like her black and blue stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember being pretty close with Bianca Mercer. Mm-hmm. But like, I don't think I knew at the time. I just wasn't aware about how like isolated and kind of in my own little group I was being. And I don't think I was on purpose. I think it was also just a nature of where we live. But I think in terms of, so going from our high school to then college, there was obviously some diversity in college too, but I felt like it was because it was just that much bigger. The segregation was just even more apparent. Self-segregation, not obviously real segregation.
Yeah. Princeton's an integrated.
Yeah, it didn't integrate yet. But I don't know. So I felt like actually, and I think exposure to people of like different like monetary backgrounds, like wealth and whatever. Like we had way more of that in high school than I did. I mean, when I got to college, because like, so if I'm thinking back to high school, my family was like pretty like middle upper maybe, but like my parents were teachers, like worked real hard. My brother and I shared a car. We had my grandmother's old car when she stopped driving. Like it was like, we called it the box. It was a white Oldsmobile with a bench seat in the front.
Oh
It was
yeah.
amazing. Yeah. But yeah, so I think exposure to, and I think also since I grew up going to the Dominican Republic, which again sounds fancy, but my parents, we had a family friend who owned a house there, who was a doctor and owned a house, and they never used it in the summertime, and they always offered it to our family because my dad spoke Spanish. So it was actually one of the like cheaper vacations we could do, because it was like you just fly there and then we'd stay there for 6 to 8 weeks. So seeing like the resort compared to the town, like the poverty of a developing country, and then being exposed to most people in the Dominican Republic are some black or brown. It was interesting to learn about how race and skin color is perceived in another country where the majority of people are, or like a country that was colonized, and that's a whole nother thing. Because then I went back and I lived there as an adult too. So I lived in the Dominican Republic for 3 years in my mid to late 20s.
Doing heart surgeries.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Saving the little children.
Yeah.
No, that was actually hopefully trying to get children not pregnant. I like started like some sex education programs in like public schools.
No way.
And did like HIV and AIDS stuff.
It's so funny because I did look at the yearbook before we started, and I saw that like Leslie and I think Paige, you were in the AIDS peer education.
I was an AIDS peer educator. I do remember this. Yeah. And I don't even know when because I also was I did so many clubs and stuff.
It was a joke. I mean, Paige did end up also in like a scientific field, but like, for them, at least Leslie, I remember the most talking about just how funny it was, and Paige agreed just to be able to tease these boys.
Right. But like bringing like a banana in or something. Right. Yeah. Well, and I can't even imagine how uncomfortable I felt doing that, because so I was in like student government and like AIDS peer educator. But like, so when I was younger, I like didn't talk, and I was petrified of speaking in front of a classroom or anything like that. And I do remember 7th grade, I think it was Mr. Foch. I only remember that because I think you mentioned his name in another, and I loved him. What? Oh no, I liked him. I think I liked him. Who was the science teacher?
Science was
Schweighauser. I did like Miss Parker. Miss Parker was English, right?
So we had 7B together.
We had was that 7B? And 6th grade, I had maybe APOD. Was that Goldberg and
Delmuto?
Watson. I had them. But I think it was Mr. Foch or Mr. Schweighauser that like encouraged me to run for like a class office or something, or like student government or something like that. And I never would have done it. And then my parents were like, yeah, you should do it. Mostly because they knew that I'd be like, scared shitless to talk, and that would be good to like, like exposure therapy, like go talk in front of people and like sweat profusely and ramble and
in the deep end.
Yeah. So that like was my first, because I think like student government throughout the whole time, but I always was like, I'll be the vice president. I'll do the like one behind everybody, like to not be like up in center. But why am I talking about this? I don't know.
Well, I was asking about, we were talking about sex ed and how
Oh
nervous
yeah.
you were. And I was making the joke that like, we were talking about just our inexperience. And so,
Right. Like I can't even imagine, like I felt uncomfortable, like just like raising my hand to talk in school, like let alone I somehow got up in front of classrooms and was like, this is how you put a condom on a banana. So I'm not even sure. I probably was like profusely sweating the whole time doing it, but I do remember doing it. I think I also was like the president of the Health Careers Club.
right. Yeah.
And I would organize blood drives. And I organized like some coat drives for homeless people. I did key clubs. I don't know what else I did. Key club stuff. I did all the things.
Varsity, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it really all like, it was really just centered around like, so I know Key Club and some of the other clubs were like the ones that people could just like go sign in on, but like I didn't. I like did a coat drive for people and like
well, you didn't have any parties to go to. So.
Right.
You're supposed to,
I do remember
to be here from 4:00 till 6:30. Where are you guys going?
Yeah.
I'll take notes for you.
Yeah. So yeah, it was super cool. I did I don't remember there. I do remember like some party after maybe a winter formal and somebody had gin. And now I like gin as an adult, but back then everyone was like, it's pine needles. And all I can remember is anytime I drink gin, I'm like, pine needles. Which I do have gin in my closet right now. What?
It's a tough one for me. I like it, but when I drink it, I only drink it in the summer usually. But gin gets me so drunk.
Oh.
Like fun drunk, but like I want to talk to everybody drunk. Like gin is like, who's on Facebook that I can message?
I don't know. Maybe it does that to me too. I don't know. But I just, in terms of the only alcohol that I like I studied abroad for a summer in Mexico because I couldn't do, I always wanted to study abroad and like live in Latin America at some point. And in college, it was like playing sport. It was looked down upon if you like took a whole semester off because even though field hockey was a fall sport, we had a spring season. So like missing the spring season was like you weren't supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. And I like to follow the rules, except I feel like as an adult, I'm like way less likely to follow rules now as I was. Cause I was like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did a summer abroad and I was in a really small program through Arcadia.
Oh yeah.
What was it before?
Beaver.
What?
Beaver College.
Yeah, Beaver College. Yeah. So it changed to Arcadia and there weren't many like summer programs that fit to when my school ended. My school ended way later in May comparatively to other colleges. So most of the programs would have already started. So I was like not that interested in Mexico, but I was like, all right, I'm doing it, Mexico. And then I got there, I studied in Guadalajara and it was amazing because there were only like 4 other people in my class that were Americans. And we became friends with like the Mexican kids that were taking summer classes at the university that we were at. Cool. So it was a pretty awesome experience. We also decided that we had to drink at least a shot of tequila every day. So when I came back to college, it's like the one alcohol that I'm like, I could take a sip of this really good tequila right now, but like, and maybe take 1 shot. But like, if you give me any more than that, I might vomit. Like I might have like a dry heave reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of bad tequila was had and good tequila, but yeah.
When you went to college, you went to Princeton, and you said you didn't even, I'm assuming you did you go for sports? Were you recruited for sports?
I was recruited, but Ivy League schools don't give scholarships. So yeah, it was a big decision.
Yeah, that's why I didn't go either.
Well, see, the thing is, like, I honestly, like, I remember getting some recruiting letters, like maybe it was junior year or something, and being like, oh, right, I'm going to go to college. But it was from like Brown and Harvard and Princeton and I forget where else, but a bunch of Ivy League schools. And I just like, that wasn't on my radar at all. Like my oldest brother went to UNC, which is a very good school, and he's super smart. My other brother, Andy and Brian, went to Villanova, also super good schools. So, and like no one in my family, I don't think, went to an Ivy League school. So it just like, it wasn't like something that was like, oh, I have to go here or do this or whatever. And then I don't know. I don't know.
Well, did you visit other schools?
I did. I went to, no, I mostly actually did my recruiting trips to, I went to Brown. I visited Harvard on my own and didn't really like it. I didn't want to go to like, I didn't want to be in Boston. I mostly to like where the sports area is compared to where the university is like super far away and it's kind of disjointed. And then quite frankly, like the rest of the Ivy League is better at field hockey now, but like they're not that good. So like Brown, I would have gone to Brown and like they were okay. And they played on a rooftop in Providence, but it was like, I really liked Providence and thought that was pretty cool. And like the vibe of Brown, I remember the application to Brown, you had to handwrite it.
Oh, wow.
Right. I was like, what? So I had to like handwrite my essays. And I don't know what that was about. But I did look at like Duke and UNC. And before I don't think I ended up going on recruiting trips there. And I also looked at Penn State too. But there was nothing. So I went over. Oh, I went to Cornell too, for recruiting trips. God, the most awkward recruiting trip I had actually was at Princeton. And the person I stayed with was in like an 8-person like suite.
Oh.
And so it was like a big common room with lots of like doubles and singles down a hallway. So it was like this little mini suite. And so obviously everybody in, so at Princeton, they don't put people together with athletes. You just get put with everybody. So it was like a random time in the fall and everyone else is just like going out and partying because it's college, right? And so it was, I think, a Friday night and we were in bed early because she had a game the next day, but the other 8 people, not on that wavelength. And I'm sleeping on the futon in their common room. So, and someone comes in with like a guy that she brings home after going out. I'm like asleep. Luckily, I'm facing the wall, but they start making out and like going at it on like a chair, like across the room from me. And I'm like, oh my God, hopefully they just like go to her room soon or something. And then at one point they stop and the guy is like, she's gotta be awake, right? Like she's got to be awake and like talking about me. And I was like, oh my God, don't move. It was awkward. It was so terrible.
Lizzie.
Yeah. So I was awake and I heard everything and it was traumatizing. But I still chose.
She said, sign me up.
Yeah, I still chose school there. But so yeah, so the end was like Princeton was really good in field hockey. We were like top 10 in the country, and even though you couldn't have people with scholarships, and it's also like I had to say, and the joke is like you say like, oh, I go to school in New Jersey, because like if you just say Princeton, everyone's like, oh, Princeton, and like has all these misconceptions and biases towards whatever, and probably some of them are legitimate for sure. but I still find even to this day, like I don't outright say all the time, like, this is where I went to school. Cause there's always some reaction. But I just couldn't pass up, yeah, it was the best field hockey program and best school. So it was like literally the best of the best. My other options would have been like UNC and Duke, which would have been really good too. But, and maybe a little bit better in field hockey, but we were comparable to that. And yeah, so, luckily they have really good financial aid.
There you go.
Yeah.
What was that like then to separate? Where did Andy go? Villanova?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not that far. You guys are what, like an hour?
Oh no, he came to visit all the time.
And like 45 minutes from each other. So
right.
But I don't know, it's your first time living away from your twin brother.
Yeah.
How's that?
It was interesting. It really was a hard, I think initially, I think I've now realized at any point during a transition in my life, I struggle a little bit. Mm-hmm. The positive thing for going to college was I immediately started playing field hockey and had like a built-in like support group, and like feeling of belonging, within my team. But yeah, it was, like establishing, I went out more, and I was known to be like a more social, like outgoing person. And I was like, guys, in high school, I was like the shy twin, like, and now I'm like the outgoing, whatever one. I was the one like peer pressuring people to be like, come on, let's go out. It's fine.
So something else that I've been accused of, not in a bad way, but people have mentioned that they feel like I'm kind of like living out, my high school oppressions and things that I wish I could have done in high school. And like, I'm kind of living those out now, which I don't necessarily disagree with. Do you feel like you were, once you started becoming more comfortable, and you said you definitely, wished you kind of, had that mindset a little bit more when you were younger, but as you were getting older and you were like now doing these things, do you feel like you were compensating for what you lost in time in doing these things?
Yeah, I think a little bit for sure. I definitely had a mentality of like, okay, well, I was so focused on school and sports before, like, and I had social aspects, and I didn't feel like that was completely lacking in high school, right. But it just wasn't, I was totally fine in high school being like, nah, I can't really go to that because I got this other thing going on. In college, I was like, man, I don't want to miss out. And now I don't know. Now I'm like somewhere in between. So yeah, a little bit like, so when I lived in the Dominican Republic, like in my 20s, and in New York right after college, I went out a bunch, but like, it was a very much the same kind of, and I hate this phrase, but a work hard, play hard. I despise that kind of phrase, but like, it still kind of was that, like, I was still pretty intense about like my school or job or whatever it is what I was doing and wanted to be successful, but then also still like wanted a release, I guess, more. So yeah, I think I don't regret how high school went. I have really fond memories of high school. I actually wish that I had a better perspective, and didn't take everything so seriously, as much as I did. However, like that opened up a lot of doors for me and brought me to experiences that have been so impactful in my life, and friendships that I have, and things that like I wouldn't want to give up for the world. So I don't know, like it's why I wouldn't change. I don't think I would change high school that much. I mean, you can't have it all, I guess, all the time, although right now I want to.
I think I try to come to those realizations of like appreciating the type of person that you are. And, when I think about the person that I am as far as like creativity, I probably couldn't be this person if I didn't live the life I lived, where I spent, as a teenager, time on the internet as a chat room moderator, and
Right. Yeah.
learning how to illegally download stuff, and just getting
Got
involved.
away with that in college
Oh,
for big time. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so like I've just always been involved with like media stuff, and just trying to figure out how to get myself into media. And those are the things that I would do in my spare time. Only child, come
Right.
home, listen to music, go on the internet, play with programs on my computer of making music and video and figuring it all out. So now here I am doing interviews on my computer.
Right. No, which I mean, I think, yeah. So I like to think about maybe why I did stuff. I like to figure out like what makes people tick and do what they do. I still find though, and I try and do this with myself, but I still find that I have, it's still harder to do that to yourself rather than to see the outside perspective from someone else. But I still think I'm trying to figure it all out. I
All the
don't,
time. Yeah,
yeah,
you never, and that's the frustrating part is, I think I have it figured out. And then something happens that I realize makes me feel differently. And I think, well, why do I feel that way? And it makes me mad. Because I can't define it, and I don't know what it is. And you just think like, oh, I guess I just must be changing. And you have to accept that and let that happen, and figure out how you're going to adapt.
right, which is for sure a difficult thing. And I feel like I was better at adapting and dealing with some stuff. I think better in, so what I think I miss as like an adult or even by college, like a very big struggle for me going from high school to college was I felt prepared, but I also felt like I functioned much better under like the more structured environment of high school. And having somebody, like, it was why it was really good that I was still on a team, like having some parameters that like I have committed to and I will continue to do and like shape certain things. As an adult, I find it really difficult to like maintain that level of like intensity or anything that I used to do all the time. I find it much harder as an adult to do that. So if it's not your work environment that's giving this to you, like you have to create it for yourself. And I struggle with that more than I think I knew beforehand, because I didn't really actually have the opportunity to, like, I would go through transitions, but there was always some sort of like safety net for me, I think, before.
Well, it's funny
Does
because
that make any sense?
yeah, because I went to film school, and
Yeah.
coming out through high school, I wasn't very great at, I don't know, I don't want to undersell myself, but I wasn't great at stuff. I had talents, but I don't think I was able, like, really good at mastering a specific skill.
See, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
But I thought when I got to college, I got pretty good in creating media. I did radio, and I did video and film and writing and editing, and I think in all those I was pretty happy with all the stuff that I did. But I think more so, I really mastered a schedule. And when I got to Temple, by the time my senior year came, when I think about how the type of schedule I used to cut, pretty much all the way from like, so like say 05 when I started my senior year, because I graduated a year later. But going from like 05 and then going all the way to like maybe 09 when I got done my year and a half at WWE, the type of schedule I used to cut for those 4 years is pretty ridiculous. The amount of travel that I did, the amount of sleep that I didn't take, and the energy I had, and then the social life that I did on the outside of that, it probably took like 7 years off of my life, because because I went hard. And I think when I graduated, I had this thing in my brain that said, now you don't have anything you have to do, right? Because nothing's due.
right.
And this is before I had a real job where you're doing projects and you're doing like things with deadlines. This is when I graduated college, I was still at Wawa. So it was just, you go to Wawa every day, you do this. And I was at corporate. So it was just like, you just go here and you do this stuff for the company every day. And that's cool. But it was when I left there and I was like 20, I was like 29 or 27.
Yeah.
that I said, okay, how do I structure the things that I want to do in my life that no one's paying me for, but I know is going to better my life? How do I do those things and do them successfully and put them out? And that was really hard to do without any type of an institution that I really existed in between college and and WWE, that it was just kind of set up for me to just use your talent. Right. Oh, okay, great. Now it's use your talent, but also do it in a
So, but what spurred you to do that? Because that's really like, I mean, being able to recognize that that's what you needed is, well, like a accomplishment in and of itself, I feel like, right? Like recognizing that that's what you needed to do in order to.
I didn't know. I didn't know
you
that
started doing it.
I didn't know that I was like excelling then until I felt like I was failing after the fact. And you think, what's different? And even have like friends that say like, man, I remember when used to be able to party all night, and then you do the dishes, and then you'd edit for like 6 hours. And it's like, what happened? It's like, I would just go like, I'm old. No, I'm not using my time as wisely as I was, or like, my mind's not constantly on. I take way more breaks in life. I can go hard for a couple days, and then I'll have 2 days where I just go, I felt like I've done enough. And that's a horrible like mentality to get into, but I know it's because I don't have a 5-day-a-week thing saying, here's your things. I have to create that for myself. It's almost like a teacher with a lesson plan. I have to create my own lesson plan and then teach myself and learn it. You know what I mean? Like it's
right. No, that's a hard thing to maintain.
Yeah. I really struggle with that outside of in my adulthood. That's the hardest thing for me.
Yeah, no, I for sure do. And I also used to have a lot of different jobs that would give that kind of structure or something. And now I don't. So it's like, I mean, the reason I can do this right now, thank you, COVID, right? Like I am unemployed right now. And I'm really like this year, I'm struggling because everything has been before. Like I've been so trained, I think, to view success and whatever as like, oh, you've reached this thing, you're in this benchmark and you're doing this and whatever, like things that don't really matter, that I think that's how, I don't think it's my parents necessarily. I think it's more just like societal, like how, I don't know how.
Well, it's funny you say
like a meritocracy kind of like you have to achieve this to, I don't know. Or the people I have been surrounded by for so long, which again, were motivating, but also I remember getting to college and just like feeling like exhausted and just like breathing like a sigh of relief of like, okay, can I take a break yet? Like, it's like, and then finally finishing college, because college was the same way of like, I mean, there was structure, but I really struggled with the fact that it wasn't as structured. And like, I would try and go do something, but then like, 8 hours later, I was still sitting in the library or like not doing like whatever. So like the lack of that structure in college was difficult for me. And then I found afterwards, like I've never figured out how you were saying before, like I've never felt that I was like insanely good at anything. I just always worked hard and like I liked a lot of things, but nothing was like, this is my passion. And so like for choosing like what I want to do in life, I still feel the same way. I'm like, but do I want to do that forever? I don't think it's like, I'm not that passionate about it that I want to do it forever. So
what was your major at Princeton?
Oh, history.
Wow.
Latin American history. Yeah.
Whoa. So, okay,
but I also thought I initially did like some pre-med stuff. I took chemistry, I took calculus there. I did, I thought maybe I'd be like an econ major. Then I thought maybe I'd be like a psychology major. And then I finally, like, I was so freaked out by like having to choose because again, I was like putting too much pressure on myself because I was like, whatever I choose as my major, like this is what I'm going to have to do with my life. And like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Yeah, so I was a Latin American history major.
That's so funny that you felt so structured, because it sounds like, if anything, that's the one thing your parents didn't push on you, was any type of structure, but you really had this concept of like,
So they did, in terms of like, which is what I need to work on creating for myself. Like, we always had dinner. We always got up. Like, I could, like, even though I like stayed up later to study, like by like 11:30, like my parents were like, you got to go to bed. This is still too late. Like even 11 o'clock, it was like too late. Like sleep. Like this is time for like, so there was like eating time, whatever time, like there was that kind of structure. And I think also too, the fact that we didn't have like internet and like everything to like as many distractions growing up, like I'm thankful that I did not have those. But so they did in terms of that structure, but they didn't put pressure to like have to do something, you know?
yeah. So it seems so odd that you had that pressure on yourself of like, have to pick this major, have to move forward with this, have to like reach these goals, right?
Yeah.
These kind of like phony.
I don't know where I was getting them from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I don't know where that comes from. Part of my DNA, I guess. We're being surrounded by people all the time that like were so overachieving. So I went from Princeton to living in New York, which I feel like that is a person level of intensity if someone's like living in New York. And then I moved back to Philly and did a post-bac program because I was a history major. So I did all my like science classes at Penn and lived at home, which was interesting. And commuted like down to Penn and did like a post-bac program and did like all the sciences that I didn't do in college that I needed for med school. Then I moved to the Dominican Republic. But like the expat community is a lot of like-minded people, but also like kind of intense too. Like I was all like really high achieving people. So that I was surrounded by them there, like State Department people, other like public health people. And then I went to med school, which was equally intense people. And then I started teaching, which I guess that varies. Science.
So what happened that you start it with history, but then you end up in med school? How does that transition?
I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, so you're doing history, and then you what? I mean, you're doing Latin American history, and you realize you don't want to.
So I wanted to do. I wanted to work for a human rights organization, and I did research on like the atrocities in Latin America, human rights atrocities. So my like thesis was on like the dictatorship in Argentina from 76 to 83. And I chose it because I got to go to Argentina also. Well, it was interesting to me, but like, I mean, and there was like torture and 30,000 people just like disappeared. Oh, right. This is podcast. So this is going to be YouTube too.
It can be on YouTube. Yeah. People can see it on YouTube.
That makes me cringe a little bit, but,
come to YouTube to see the air quotes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I did. I wanted to work for, I was thinking a human rights organization. So in order to do that, like be a lawyer, but that was only when at one point, like, I mean, in college, I was a full sitter. This is when I thought I wanted to be a vet. So on Friday nights, me and my one friend would volunteer at like, it's called the Mid-Atlantic Equine Center. And we would do like 8-hour shifts because Friday night was not like a going out night in Princeton.
A phone sitter?
Full, like a baby horse.
Oh.
Yeah. Wow. And so I would go and we would like administer like medication and stuff and take care of like mares and foals that were having problems. And like at the surgical center, because in Jersey, there's like a really big like equine surgical center on the East Coast. So I would do that. And that's when I thought I wanted to be a vet. And I also did like some oncology stuff in Philly right after freshman year, like summer, thinking that I wanted to maybe be a doctor. Oh. And then I was like, no, maybe I want to be a lawyer and work for a human rights organization. So then my major was history. I did lots of human rights stuff, and then I worked at a law firm right out of college.
Wow.
But I chose, like, it was like a really big firm in New York. And I worked in a real estate group though. So that was giving me no indication of what it would be like to be a real estate lawyer. I mean, sorry, a human rights lawyer. But throughout the whole thing, I was like, wow, I just need more people interaction. Cause I liked a lot of my coworkers, but they were also miserable. All the lawyers were miserable. And the other legal assistants and I had no life. Like, I made okay money in New York, and I got to take like a black car home when a deal would go late, but I'd work till like 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd come in at 10, and then I'd work until like when a deal was closing or something. And I had crazy, like corporate America, crazy hours. And I was just like, I'm not able to like do anything that I actually like. I haven't been to a museum yet in New York, and I haven't done I wasn't able to like do much. And I just, throughout the time, I was like, I don't know. I was doing like financings on like a big hotel that was going to be built or something. And I was like, great. I just like printed out this sheet from my computer, and it's worth $3 billion. And I literally just typed it up. And if I lose this right now, I'll probably lose my job. And it's not going to be built for another 10 years. So I'm not going to, like, there was not enough immediacy with it.
No instant gratification.
Right. So I left, and I started working at Columbia in eating disorder research. And yeah.
How do you go from being a Latin American history major to being a lawyer at a real estate office?
Yeah. So what won't be shocking is, in a couple more years, I'm going to find out I have ADHD.
Can't help it.
And the reason why I felt so exhausted my entire life is because it has been so exhausting.
You're changing careers every 4.5 years.
Yeah. And I'm still on that track, and I'm trying to figure out what I need to do now. How has dating during COVID been?
It's tough.
Yeah.
To any of the girls that might be watching this or this now, I salute you. It's really hard, especially, talking about the things that I've talked about with, like, where people say, like, I might be trying to live out the things that I didn't get to do in high school or whatever, you're trying to like live that part out. It's really tough in that way. And probably the way that I date, to go into a relationship, and I'm not a person to cheat or anything like that. And so I don't go into a relationship where there's a pandemic, or I don't go out with someone in a pandemic with the idea of I'm going to go out with 5 different girls.
And I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish it was me, but it's not. And what that leaves you with now, if I was just dating and there was no pandemic, sure, maybe go on a date or two and try to date a few different people and see kind of what feels like the right click. But in this day and age, I feel kind of not stuck, but I feel like I have to be somewhat committed to just hanging out with one person, even if you're just trying to get to know each other. And that can be a really tough mind fuck, because you feel like
I was had a similar mentality in dating. Like, always wished I could maybe date other people or multiple people at once, but I get too like focused on, like, I can't keep multiple people.
Yeah. And I could be okay with it in the normal world, and like a date here, and then I probably fall off and I just end up with one girl within 2 weeks anyway. Yeah. But like in COVID, I just have a thing in my mind where I can't get out of my mind that I'm prematurely committed.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible thing to go into, thinking I'm not ready. I need time. And then you start putting time limit, and you go, well, if I'm not truly in love with this girl in the next like month and a half, or I don't feel like
that's a dangerous slope. Yeah.
But I don't want to feel like, and I'm 37. I don't know if you have these feelings, but like, I don't want to feel like I'm losing time. And I know it's so much different for women, right? You talked about not even thinking about like family life until you were so much older.
Oh, except that now, like, I have a moment in med school where they like literally put up on the screen, like in a lecture, and it was like fertility, like everyone's like, oh, your clock and whatever. And I'm like, okay, whatever. You watch the line. I remember sitting in lecture and just being like, fuck. Like it was just this, like from 30, maybe even under, it was just like a downward slope. And I was like, God damn it. Because I started med school at 28. Wow. So I already was like above like most, yeah, anyway. So it's for sure, it's something that you have to be aware of later in the game. But I also feel like that's a little bit liberating in the sense of like, all right, are you like still here to fuck around or are you serious about something? And like, stop like, because I at one point did like, I guess probably in med school time, I did like some of the online apps and all that stuff. And like, I mean, you can just find such a variety of people that like some people might be interested in something serious. Some people might be interested in just like texting you forever. Like, which I find that it's a little liberating that you can just be like, look, we're both like 37 later, whatever. Like, what do you want?
My problem is that I could feel good about it for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month and a half. And then I just go, you know, I don't feel like I'm growing closer and worse. I'm looking out at other things, grass is greener. And I'm wishing that I was having the opportunity to at least explore just so I know for myself, like, hey dude, you know, and I just feel like, and while I'm not looking to have like just wild COVID sex in a normal world, when you've gone out with someone for like 4 weeks, I don't think it's crazy to have a date with someone else just to kind of test to see how you're feeling if you think you might have a spark with someone. And when all you have is to be stuck in that mind of how do I feel about this person? And maybe not everyone thinks like that. Some people might just live in the moment and not compare. I can't help but compare with everything. How does this compare to something else, this other thing?
No, I mean, like humans are set up to do that, which is why social media is such a terrible. Oh, I haven't mentioned my fiance is Jewish.
Oh, awesome.
So I also am entering into a not biracial, but by
faith.
By faith. What is it? Multi-faith?
Interfaith.
Do you feel like you need to marry a Jewish girl?
I struggle with this all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Anytime I date someone, if she's Jewish.
Like, are you on J-Date?
No.
Okay.
I've never been on J-Date. When I think about like my life, I can't imagine my life not celebrating Jewish holidays. Because
but does your partner need to be Jewish to celebrate the Jewish holidays, or
I'm not Jewish enough to know what the fuck I'm doing?
Okay.
I need a Jew to like say like, okay, this is hey, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are coming up in like 3 weeks. The way that my mom lets me know when I need to put it on my calendar to get ready to come for dinner, I need a wife that's going to be able to do that for me. Having it in my life, I feel like I would be really sad if it wasn't there, and I don't trust myself to be able to keep it in my life on my own. And I don't know how I'd feel about not having it in, if I could have kids, to have it in my kids' life.
Right.
If we're just doing Christmas because it's on me to do Jewish holidays, I don't know how well I do, but
gotcha.
You know, I don't know how to say this in any other way. There's so many pretty girls that aren't Jewish.
Right.
and I hate to say like, wow, this girl looks like she's the girl of my dreams. And this is what people mean when they say I'm immature. You know, my view of like love or relationships is very immature. And I go, she's so pretty. She's my dream girl, but she's not Jewish. I would hate to lose that opportunity.
So what's your dream girl?
Be anything. It really like it starts, I think, with looks. Usually it starts with looks and then it goes into like other things. And I think every time I meet a girl, I find the other things that it goes into that I didn't think were as important as they are.
Okay.
But B, they're more important than I thought they were.
Okay.
And that's the problem with COVID.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I can't
Bring it back to
imagine.
COVID. That is the problem, is that I have trouble weighing all these different characteristics and what do I truly want to do. And being 37, I don't want to fuck around. And I feel like I kind of want to make a decision on how do I feel in the first few months. And if I don't feel it, I want to kind of roll.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's like a bad thing.
It is if
I
you're
mean,
not.
so I would say like if you're giving like a couple of weeks or like a couple of dates versus if it's a couple of months, depending on how much time you've spent with the person, like you probably have a sense at that point, right? Like, no.
I don't trust my own brain.
Oh, so okay. So I have a friend, because I would say that the majority of my friends are now getting like married and kids and whatever. And I used to be one of the last, well, I am still the last because I'm not married yet. And I just got engaged like a couple months ago.
Nice rock.
Yeah, he did a good job. But all on his own too. He didn't ask anybody.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I was impressed. But so I've had the same like, well, I'm getting older, and like now that I finally know that I actually, before I was like, I don't know if I want a family and all this stuff, and I was so like career driven, and now I'm just like, God, do I want to be a stay-at-home mom? Like, I weigh between like that, like a part of me just wants to be like a stay-at-home mom that like helps with a nonprofit or something, or like helps in the community versus like having a career. And I don't know, don't know which one will win out, but at this point, like I have to still prioritize, like I'm 37. There's only so much. I mean, and for men, it's a little bit easier, but your sperm gets old too. Like you
And
don't want
not
to
for
wait
nothing.
too long. What?
No, my parents are 11 years apart.
Yeah. Oh, and that's difficult as well too.
I don't, this sounds horrible, but I don't want to be the 45-year-old that is, has to keep looking for girls, 10 to 15
Super young. Yeah.
yeah, younger than him because I want to have kids. And I even go through that where, I'll meet women who don't have interest in having kids.
Yeah.
And you maybe don't know it right away, and then you find out second date or third date, and then you just go like, well, she seems cool. I'm okay with like not having kids and meeting someone that as a grown-up I just like to do everything with. She's the person I want to have fun with.
Right.
And we're gonna just spend the rest of our lives traveling and just laughing and having a great time. At 37, I would hate to be 46 and think about the girl that I dated when I was 37 that didn't want to have kids, and I shut her out after we dated for a few months because I was adamant about having kids, and then I never met that girl that I was going to have kids with. And I go, boy, I wish I had had the last 5 to 7 years with that
person. Yeah, but if I mean, yes, right, but like you're never going to know that. Like, so you have to at least take the chance that like, so I mean, if having a family and having kids is important to you, then like I don't think you should necessarily sacrifice that. Like you can still find someone. It's definitely, I mean, dating in your 30s, I've found to be extremely difficult. And the fact that like you're finding like divorced people already, right? Like your options in your 30s are like someone who hasn't gotten married at all. Then you're like, okay, why haven't you gotten married? But then I'm like, okay, but I'm the person that hasn't gotten married either.
I'm the red
so I'm like,
flag.
okay, but it's me too. But or it's people that are like newly divorced and maybe late 30s, early 40s, something like that.
With a family.
Or even I knew a couple people that were like early 30s that were just divorced. And they got married like really young or something right out of college. But I don't know, like I feel like having a family is such a big enough thing that that's something you'd have to decide on before, like
I mean, I do. I want a family, and whenever someone says they're not sure, that's like ooh, this probably isn't gonna. I think I have a problem with standing up for those things so blatantly and saying,
Right.
well, who am I to say that, hey, I don't think this is going to work because you don't. I feel like I'm almost placing judgment on someone's values when they say they don't want a family, that it can take me, it's hard for me to say, got to break it off, because I just go, well, this may not happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, I mean, you have to, I mean, even as someone who's like about to get married at some point now, like, I'm like, oh, I'm 37. Like, will I be able to have kids? I don't know. Like, will it happen? I don't know. I like, you don't know. Like, I've spent my whole life trying not to get pregnant, so I don't know. But I don't know. I will say though, so my fiance, when we first, I tried, because so I think for women, especially later in life, like, I didn't want to seem like I was just like, oh my gosh, do you want to have a kid? Like, and be too aggressive about that, because I feel like that always scared off people. So I would always try my best to, like, even though it was a question in my mind, not bring it up for a while, to not seem like it was like something big, or like too scary, I guess, or to scare somebody off.
Yeah.
But I think my fiance's initial question to having kids was maybe. And I was like, huh, this might not be good. But then I was like, okay, I'm not going to push it. Like, we'll see. And then before I finally moved out to California, I was like, okay, but I got to know for real. Like, have you decided yet? Like, and like, so it was, but this is after probably like a year and a half of dating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that your longest relationship?
Right now we've been together for almost 3 years. And yes, this is my longest relationship.
Was the year and a half the longest relationship at that point? No? Okay.
That was like tied. I dated a Dominican American guy for a year and a half.
Okay.
And that was the first time I was like, oh, maybe I want to get married and have kids,
Yeah.
and could like see that for myself. And that was when I was like 27, 28.
Okay.
Right as I left for med school, I ended with this other guy. Yeah. But I don't know. It was a questionable thing, but I also was like, I don't want to feel like I've like, convinced him to have kids when he doesn't want to have kids. Cause like, you don't
want to Nikki Bella him.
Right. Yeah. You're like, you don't want that at all. But I don't know. It's been convincing enough. Like, I think his mentality before was like, well, if it happens, it maybe happens. But now that we're together, like, we want to have a family and build a life together. And he's like all about it. And I didn't necessarily, I had some reservations initially. Which I don't know if I would push if I was even older. Cause when I first started dating him, I guess I was like 35, 34, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
For you then, what's your fiance's name?
Adam.
So then how did you meet Adam in your life? So you were at Princeton, and then you do all these awesome, really high level jobs that you actually have no real interest in pursuing.
Oh, I do. But I mean, I loved my jobs, all the jobs, but I just don't know if they were sustainable.
But then how do you end up in, I want to get to the point where you meet Adam, but you're also in med school. How do you go to med school from, you're in the middle now, you're like 2 years out of college and you're working this job you don't even want to be doing. How do you get to med school from there? Oh, you went to New York.
I did. Yeah.
You were part of like this super group of like Amma and your brother and Rachel Weiss and Heather Beck. And yes. I see you guys on Facebook. I see what's going on.
Yeah. And so I actually first thing, like Katie Eveland also is in New York. And when we graduated from college, we both lived in Chelsea. And she lived with like two of her friends from Penn State. I lived with a Princeton friend and then a rando from like a Princeton list who went to Middlebury. She was awesome. I love her. She's great. Tasalia. We live like a couple blocks away from each other. So it was really awesome because like she's been one of my best friends forever. And then, but there's various times that have gone through life where maybe we're in a little more contact or not as much contact as we have been. But so like living so close to each other in New York, like we really reestablished, like we could go over to each other's places all the time. Like I go to her apartment all the time. We'd meet up for drinks. We'd like all that stuff. I traveled around Europe right after college, like sounding super like privileged and white.
I'm going to Europe for the summer.
I'm going
to backpack.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It was just, I mean, like figuring your life out through traveling was pretty cool. And then I came back and I was like, okay, I'm going to try and help people by being a human rights lawyer. Didn't happen. And then I was like, okay, I think I want to go back to medicine. Hence the going back to Columbia. And I worked at the eating disorder clinic because for medicine, you need like so many different things to be able to even apply. And you need work experience. And I thought the work experience I had was too long prior. So I did that for a while, which was actually really cool. And I realized at that point, so many people that I knew like came out of the woodwork and were like, hey, I have an eating disorder. Once I said I like worked at an eating disorder place, so many people came out of the woodwork and were like, wanted to tell me about it. And then I did my post-bac program. And then I had the opportunity to, I just cold emailed a doctor from Colombia that I knew started a clinic in the Dominican Republic, and was like, hey, do you have any job opportunities? And like, this is me and I'm interested in this. And I used to work here and blah, blah, blah. And he did. And so I applied and interviewed and it was basically just like a volunteer position that I had like a stipend for. And I thought like spending time in Latin America prior to med school would be like, if I went to med school, I would just be sucked in and I would keep going and I would never live abroad and I wouldn't be able to do it. It also helped that at that point in time, that's when I was like figuring out that I had ADHD and was really struggling so standardized tests were never my forte, despite the fact that obviously I was successful.
Yeah.
But
half of education is like weighed by Scantron standardized tests.
Right. And I just don't do as well. But obviously I still do okay. Right. Like I'm not, woe is me. But I always just thought like, I work really hard. Like I'm not that smart and I work really hard. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, no, I'm pretty smart.
Yes.
Yeah. But like, I just don't think the same way that everybody else thinks. And I take longer to do certain things. So I finally and I also like growing up, like I know ADHD was a thing that people started to be diagnosed with, but I felt like when we were growing up, like it wasn't as big of a thing. Or
not legitimately.
Right. Or it was like, oh, you're just like, it was like, you're a hyperactive boy. And I don't know, like the old rules of how you would diagnose somebody with it. So, and then also I think I had the preconceived notion that a lot of people have that like, if you have ADHD, you're not as smart, which is definitely not true at all. Right. Yeah, so when I was like studying for the MCAT and med school stuff, so particularly for the MCAT, like it's an 8-hour, back then it was I think an 8-hour test.
Wow.
And so it's like all these different sections, and it's just like, no, or maybe that one's a 6-hour test, but whatever. I mean, and then you get into med school and they're like 8-hour tests. So it's just like stamina and terribleness, and like how well can you take, oh yeah, this is wine now I've moved on to.
Yeah.
How long can you, like, basically I feel like those tests are how well can you learn to take a standardized test? And that's never been my forte. I've always like kind of just like skated by. And so I really struggled for the MCAT to succeed. So when I would take extra time when I was doing like practice tests, I'd get really awesome scores. And then when I finally sit for the actual test, I like would cancel it, or I wouldn't get as good as scores. Like I knew it wasn't happening. Like I wasn't finishing in time and all this stuff. So I finally went to see someone, which was,
you don't get extra time for the MCATs.
You could, I guess, had you known that you had ADHD and applied for it.
You didn't know.
No. So I just was like, oh, I can't finish in time. And then I finally went to see somebody and they were like, yeah, you got ADHD. Cause like, I would think back to then high school and middle school, I would never, when they would be like, oh, read this paragraph. And then like, we're going to talk about it. I'd be like halfway through the paragraph and be like, I haven't gotten to the end yet. And hopefully like, I would just like go off of like, if somebody else was asked a question first and I'd be able to like think about something or pose something from that, or continue reading while somebody else was being asked a question first. Or like for math, like can never do mental math. Like I don't have that like short-term, I like, it's terrible. Like I have to write stuff down, but like I did really well in calculus and like, when I can write stuff down and like think about it analytically and take the time to do it, I can do it. But if immediately you're like, what's whatever times whatever, I'm like, let me write that down and figure it out. So I was finally diagnosed with ADHD only after my post-bac program, and studying for the MCAT. And then I was like, oh, this makes so much sense to why I was like so exhausted all the time. Cause like I would just work so much harder to compensate. Like I would do my homework at home and I would read stuff and then be like, I didn't read any of that. Like, and have to go back and read it again. And I was just so disciplined that I would do it for hours until I got it. And so I actually debated, do I tell all the failures that I've had? But I feel like I should, because it'll be liberating, right?
Yeah.
I did really well in my post-bac program. And I did okay in college, but didn't do great. And like to get into med school, you need really good scores of everything, right? So in my post-bac program though, I did very well. And I got a conditional acceptance to Jefferson through there's a connection with the post-bac program at Penn that if you, like I applied and I interviewed and I got accepted conditionally, as long as I got certain scores on my MCAT. But this was right when I was deciding or figuring out like, oh my gosh, I have ADHD and I'm not doing as well in the MCAT as I think I should be.
Yeah.
So I did not make my scores. And so I lost my conditional acceptance. And that's actually when I first moved to the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
And like with the like silly saying of like one door closes, another one opens. Like if I hadn't moved to the Dominican Republic, like there's just so many influential, like life-changing things and relationships that I developed there that like, if that hadn't happened, I would be a completely different person today. And I wouldn't like myself as much, I think. Went back, I took the MCAT, but then like applying to med school takes so long. So it's like a year-long process. So then I moved back to the DR again and taught in a private high school in the capital. So I lived in a remote, like a smaller town, La Romana. And then I moved to Santo Domingo, the main capital, and I taught in a high school, and then also applied for med school and was like, okay, if I get in, I get in, and we'll see. And unfortunately I got in. So then I couldn't, like, I was like, God damn it, it would be much easier if I just didn't get in and like this door was closed. But I got in and to the University of South Florida, and I had come back and I changed my residency to Florida. My parents had bought a house there.
Just
And so,
coincidentally?
yeah. Oh, no, I specifically changed my residency to Florida because there were more state schools in Florida. The only one for Pennsylvania is Penn State, and their med school's in Harrisburg. And I was like, I don't want to fucking live in Harrisburg. So Florida has like 4 or 5 state schools that you could apply to. And I wanted to do it as cheaply as I possibly could. So I got in, they accepted my Florida residency. And then I was just like, well, I don't know what else to do. So I guess I'm going to go. And I have always been interested. So besides teaching, then I started working for the Clinton Health Access Initiative, which is like the Clinton Foundation, Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And that was HIV clinics. And also I was like closing them down, as well as like setting up other, doing other work for their, right before I left the Dominican Republic, a big earthquake happened in Haiti. So in the January of 2011.
Okay.
A giant earthquake.
I remember that.
Yeah, happened. And so I was on a project that I was doing like disaster relief for the earthquake. And since everything was so shut down in Haiti, it was called like the Land Bridge Project, and everything had to be kind of shipped through the DR. And I had to get it over on like trucks to Haiti. So everything from like, I was sourcing like rehydration salts once like the Nepalese UN forces dumped cholera into the water and made it endemic then to the so there was like a cholera outbreak, earthquake happening. So then it was like dealing with all the earthquake stuff, and then also then like cholera happening and massive amounts of people dying. So it was like sourcing like rehydration salts and like IV bags, as well as like koi fish. And I would like, because they were building a hospital in the Central Plateau of Haiti. So I was like shipping all this stuff over. So my daily thing would be like talking to some guy that like sells koi fish and is like super rich in the Dominican Republic. And then I'd like yell at a Dominican truck driver and just be like, where the fuck's my materials? And why didn't you get them across the border fast enough? And then I came back to go to med school, and I was like, I know I'm going to be disappointed with this, because I went from Dominican Republic, awesome job, awesome group of friends, to Tampa. And the average age of my med school class was 23, 24, and I was 28. And most of them had like never left the state of Florida. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is terrible. It was a struggle. It was a struggle, and I was not the happiest time of my life. And then I still did well and was like really still like, as much as I hated like the beginning part of med school of like classes and science and all that stuff. I mean, I did fine and whatever, but then before you start your 3rd year, your clinical area. So I started my clinical stuff, and I was like on internal medicine, and I loved it. And like, I'd come home and be with talk to my roommate, and she'd be like, man, did you take something? Like, are you on something? Cause I was just like so excited and happy about like the patients I saw and what I did. And like, I was like so energized while sleeping, like not at all. And, but I could not get, so I got accommodations for ADHD in med school, and I didn't really use them. Except when I was taking like there's certification tests, and it's called step 1, 2, 3. So step 1 is a lot of like rote memorization and like how well can you take a standardized test and all that stuff, and it's 8 hours and whatever. And the National Board of Medical Examiners wouldn't give me extra time because they said that I didn't have ADHD and I've been too successful to have ADHD because I went to Princeton and I got into med school. And so I couldn't move to the next part of med school. My med school was like pretty antiquated and wouldn't allow me to do it versus like newer or Penn and some other like better med schools would let you continue on and take it later. They made me like put everything on hold as I had to wait to see if I could pass this test. So again, like in practice tests, same thing with the MCAT, like I would do really well. And then I needed like time and a half. So about what they give people with ADHD, and they would not give me accommodations.
Wow.
So then I sued them. Which is really hard because they just can't find a lot of lawyers that do disability law.
Wild. I've never heard of that in my life. I was not expecting that. Okay.
Yeah, I sued the National Board of Medical Examiners, the NBME. But unfortunately, the man won. And I got free representation from Disability Rights Florida.
Mhm.
So that was a difficult thing to find because there aren't many lawyers that do disability law. And then of the ones that do like higher education disability law, there aren't very many, and they mostly do college. And then they also charge you like just to like one letter, they'll charge you like $3,000. So my case was taken up by Disability Rights Florida, which was awesome. But then I was on hold for like 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
And I was just in this terrible holding purgatory pattern where my med school wouldn't let me continue on. And I advocated for myself to try and like keep going. Because I was like, well, I've been really successful and I've passed everything else. And like, I'm not a danger to patients and blah, blah, blah. And they still wouldn't let me because of like administration changes and whatever. And I eventually, my case kept getting pushed off, but it's Florida too. So it's like a lot of really conservative judges that were put in. The National Board of Medical Examiners, the NBME, is actually based in Philadelphia. And they got this really big time firm out of DC to represent them. So it was all these DC lawyers flying in. I was deposed for like 8 hours, and they basically used like every positive thing that I've ever done in my life against me. I actually had I had to get people from high school to say, so I had Miss Crangy, I don't know if you remember her. She was my basketball coach, and then just someone who I had her for English and maybe sophomore year, right? Mm-hmm. She wrote a letter speaking to like what I was like in high school. The big lawyers out of DC won, and if I wanted to continue it, I'd have to go to appeals court, and then that would have been a couple more years. And I was just like, I can't keep putting off my life.
Yeah.
So that's when I left med school finally. And I still struggle with it today. So I've debated, do I go be a PA or not? I don't know, but I started teaching. So then I taught at a really rough school in St. Petersburg, Florida, an inner city school there. My kids had ankle monitors and, they would steal cars and, came from really, really terrible backgrounds. And really had no one showing them the way at all. No support at home, nothing and so I taught there and was a science department chairman. It was such a rough school that I was like, how am I as a second year teacher, the science department chairman? And then I now moved out here.
Was it the engagement, and was it your fiance moving out there that got you to California?
Yeah, we actually met at a wedding. We did 2 years of long distance.
Wow.
Which I have never been a fan of long distance before.
So he lives in California.
Yeah, he lived out here the whole time. And I was in Florida the whole time. So it was pretty far away from each other. And we met at one of my college friends' weddings. They went to business school together. And I didn't think it would actually turn into anything because I was like, he lives in California and I live in Florida. And I don't know. I guess he liked me.
Well, that gives me like serious hope.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. So we did 2 years of long distance. We still probably saw each other like once a month, once every 2 months.
Wow.
But initially it was like lots of texting and phone calls, and he hates to be on the phone too. So he definitely put forth some effort. And then we connected. I think I went home to Philly for Thanksgiving, and he has extended family in Philly. So we were able to like meet up there the first time without it being like a big kind of deal. And then after that, then we like specifically kept in touch and like made plans to see each other again. And then, yeah, then I was like, I think we're dating.
Wow.
Yeah. And then after 2 years of long distance, I moved out here.
Wow. That gives me like serious hope because I
It's
think
possible.
that's a situation that I think my mind would block off and go, no, Brad, don't even entertain. Like, there's no hope in that. You guys are 3,000. You're never going to move to,
Right.
they're never going to. And that's like one of those things where you couldn't, if you were to, I extrapolate out, you would never be able to extrapolate that out and make it work 2 years prior.
Never.
That's cool.
And I have always been someone who was like, I never want to do long distance. That's silly. Not a fan of it. And I would say like from doing long distance, like still not a fan of it, but like it's still doable. Mm-hmm. And I actually almost think it was like better in terms of really getting to know someone. And then having these like, we would have like certain times like that were completely devoted to each other, like weekends or something, you know. But I do feel like it was one, it made things, because I feel like I found before I would maybe get too into something and like move too quickly. And it would just be like, you know, an all or nothing kind of thing. And it was like a forced like break that forced you to like just really get to know someone. Yeah, so it was actually, I think ended up being a positive, but I never would have thought that. And then we had some pretty serious conversations before we drove across country together, and he helped me like move all my stuff out. But yeah, I've never moved somewhere for someone or done any of that before. So that was definitely a new frontier.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Let me ask you about like the twin aspect in high school. Were you aware of like the other twins in school? Right, we have the Man Young and Man
Sang. Yeah,
and
I remember them.
And Lizzie,
so I think
Susie
so
and
Chrissy and Susie,
the Novaks.
I don't know. It's just a weird twin thing. I feel like also when I got to college, I had a lot of twins around me too. So I think I differentiate though between like Men Young and Men Sang were identical twins. And so similar, looked very similar. I mean, you could still tell the difference between them, but you know, genetically, like they're the same.
Yeah, you're looking for nose size and moles at this
point.
Right.
Yeah, you're looking for very slight differences. And even like personality wise, like more similar than not, versus like Susie and Chrissy, fraternal twins, like me and Andy, like two very different people, but like inherently will get compared against each other because they're twins. And I find though, so I give like all props to Susie and Chrissy, like particularly when you're the same sex, like you get compared so much more. And that must have been really difficult for them. I had a friend, a pair of twins in college that were friends that were fraternal girls. And for a little while, they hated each other and were not friends at all, and eventually became good friends. And then on my team in college, I had identical twins. And they were like, you know, inseparable. And but the once you get to know them, like I could tell the difference between them from the way they walked just behind, like from behind or something, you know? So I don't know. And everyone always likes to ask like, well, what's it like being a twin? I'm like, well, like my life, I don't know. It hasn't been, I can't say what it's like to not be a twin. So what I can tell you is like, there's benefits and I would say mostly benefits actually, particularly from a girl and boy twin. We still were compared against each other all the time and probably unfairly so. But a little bit less so because we were girl and boy. I would find that Andy was more compared to our older brothers for like sports and stuff. And like, oh, Jeff and Brian did this and this. And so he had more of that comparison, whereas I didn't have any girl before me to be compared to like that. And it does kind of stink, like people just automatically like categorize you into like this twin and that twin or whatever. But it does, I mean, it's a part of your identity. So I don't know.
It's gotta be a cool
it's
thing.
like a safety blanket for me, I think.
Yeah,
Like,
I think like looking from the outside, it's kind of like,
you know, no matter what type of hangups as far as how the outside world labels you, it's got to be cool to know that if you have a good relationship, right?
we do. Yeah.
Sisters that don't get along or whatever, like, but like if you have this relationship, to be able to know that you've got this closeness that even like that no other brother sister combo could ever possibly have.
Right.
That you guys kind of have this thing as far as like when you're talking about like, you know, 21st birthday, going to Villanova and to celebrate. And it's like, wow, that's like a thing, like your brother, your whole life. And then you go down to his college town for 21st birthday. Like those are things.
It was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are like things in life that other people will never, ever, ever be able to know.
Susie and Chrissy, she was talking about how like somebody always dated somebody else and then, right? Like
sometimes they'd swap it off.
Right. Or swap or whatever. So like there had to always be like, you could never like if Andy like made out with one of my friends or something like or I made out with one of his, neither one of us could get mad at it, or it wasn't like you just kind of like it was just like a thing like that you couldn't, I don't know,
unspoken rule.
Right. Yeah. Like an unspoken thing of like, okay, we're doing this, and like maybe you make a comment at some point, but like we're not like, I don't know.
let each other live.
Yeah, and like
at the same time around it
way.
At the same time around each other, let each other live.
Yeah, and but always like Andy always has my back. It wasn't like we went and told each other everything that happened in the day or whatever, but like we invited each other to things. Like Katie is like another sister to him. Eric, both Erics, Eric Melhorn and Eric Nelson, feel like brothers to me. Chris Moss feels like a brother to me. I went to Chris Moss's wedding with Andy as his date.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Shout out to Chris Moss. He's not very active on Facebook. I found him, but we're gonna have to awaken that guy.
He's
we gotta talk about that fucking Nike shaving in the back of his head.
What did he do? Wait,
he shaved a Nike emblem in the back of his head back in middle school.
Did he?
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about this.
I have
never been forgotten, Chris Moss. I remember you.
The picture I have as like awkward middle school kids, we had a game where you put like a Velcro thing on your head and threw balls at each other.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I kind of do. It was like almost like a double dare type of.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you then.
I don't know why I was talking about that.
It was something I brought up, but let me ask you on that. Music in high school.
Yeah.
If you you're going to tell me Dave Matthews Band, aren't you?
Okay. Well, I mean, one of them for sure, but no, I mean, I still also loved, who else did I love? Okay. The first concert I ever went to, this is probably embarrassing, was Natalie Merchant.
Oh, give me a Natalie Merchant song. I got to look that up. God.
I don't know if I can. But Katie and I went to a concert at the Mann Music Center I think she gave it to me as like a present. San Andreas Fault or something. Kind of emo-ish. I definitely went to a U2 concert. But I love like Nirvana and Tupac and Snoop Dogg and Outkast and all classic rock. And one of my favorite songs growing up was like a CCR song.
Sure.
Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tom Petty, Billy Joel. I don't know. I have a very eclectic taste in music. I did go to with Molly and the guy she was dating at the time, or senior year. I saw the Roots at Penn's like spring fling.
But in high school, like it sounds like hip hop was.
I would say hip hop. So my brother Brian, who was the senior when we were freshmen, really liked hip hop, but he loved all kinds of music too. So he was the first person that ever played Dave Matthews that I heard, but he was also like the person that played Wu-Tang that I would drive in his car, and like the subwoofer was so loud, like I would like my eardrums would be vibrating.
Lizzie, you listening to the Wu-Tang Clan is something I cannot.
I know, but it happens. It happens.
Favorite movie in high school?
Favorite movie. So, I mean, if I'm thinking just like general childhood movie, Goonies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I loved the Goonies.
Why?
I think like the adventure part of it, the camaraderie part of it, like a group of people that I think that's what I like about teams too. Like everyone doesn't have to be from the same mold, but like you have a common thing that you all gather around and like can be friends around. And I don't know, I like the adventure part and the I think that like the teamwork, but like they like weren't all friends. Obviously some of them were, but maybe that part about it, I don't know.
Back to high school, I was going to ask you, did you have a favorite teacher?
Oh, I did like Mr. Quimby. Miss Crangy I was close with. Miss Satinsky, the Spanish teacher, I was close with because she coached lacrosse at some point. Miss Call, I know she was not like super popular as a gym teacher, but she was a field hockey coach. So I developed a pretty good relationship with her.
Yep.
A very different relationship, I think, than a lot of other people had as just a gym teacher. You know what I mean? Oh, I loved Miss Harrigan. She was a math teacher that I had maybe freshman year. Miss McCracken was a lacrosse coach. I loved Miss Speece's class. Paige also mentioned Mr. Schwartz. I don't think he even knew who I was, but I did enjoy his class.
Okay.
Because I was a girl too, and he didn't like recognize girls' existence. But I had him in like a split lunchtime.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that like split weird lunchtime?
Yep.
Time?
Yep.
So senior year calculus, I think it was a split lunchtime thing. So it was right after lunch and we just gone back. And so it was like, you know, you had like 20 minutes before and 20 minutes after or something like that. It was December and I had finally decided. So all I knew about college was that like, I wanted to decide early so it could just be fucking done. And I didn't want to have to deal with it. And like, I was stressed out and I was like, I just wanted it to be over with. So I applied early and my acceptance letter for Princeton came sometime like mid-December. And my mom is never one to to come into school and do anything to like embarrass. Like my parents were like, we never want to embarrass you. But she brought the letter. She was like, it's a big letter.
Well, I bet.
So I came back from lunch and I was like going to calculus, the second half of calculus class. And she's standing there in whatever fucking hallway it is. And she's like, it's big. It's big. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then it was like my acceptance letter to Princeton.
So Andy will have a similar story for when he got his letter from Villanova?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. That's messed up.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty messed up. Yeah. I have absolutely no idea, actually.
Well, I'm looking at your yearbook picture.
Okay.
And this would be the moment that if we were in person, I would ask you to sign. But little do you know, there's no room for you to really sign because Kelly Brook took all the space above you.
Gosh, and I hate that picture.
Really?
Yeah.
It looks like you.
I know it does. Yeah. Doesn't that say a lot?
So this is a nice helping. All right, ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Basketball 9 and 10.
Okay.
Field hockey 9 through 12.
Yeah.
Lacrosse 9, 11, 12.
Yeah, there we go. The 10's missing.
Winter track 11, 12.
Yep.
National Honor Society 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
Horticulture Club 10 through 12.
Yeah.
Key Club 9 through 12.
Mm-hmm.
Student Council 9 through 12. Varsity Club 9 through 12. Health Careers Club 9 through 12. AIDS Peer Educator 10 through 12.
Gosh, I seem like such a dork. Like, if you read my stuff, you'd be like, I want to be friends with her.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's true, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Then
you don't have to hide it.
Then
like, you hear that, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? But I told you, like, you were a crush, and so while didn't maybe want to hang out with you and be friendly, I'm still interested. You
I was like too overeager about everything.
That's okay though, because it like you said, it propelled you for the personality that that you needed to achieve what you achieved.
Yeah, I've simmered down a bit now. Yeah.
Well, that's good for everyone to know then. You quoted in true academia fashion, you quoted Eleanor Roosevelt.
Of course I did. Yeah, what?
The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams.
Of course. Yeah.
Thanks, Mom and Dad, for your love and support. I couldn't have done it without you. Thanks to all my friends, especially Katie, Molly, Ann. Love you guys. Andy, make your dreams come true. My other brothers, go fuck yourself. Your brothers don't get a shout out. Your other brothers don't get a shout out.
I mean, they were reading that fucking yearbook.
Yeah, I think this is the moment where I say I got nothing else. Lizzie, this has been awesome. So much fun. I know you
talk too much about myself.
Nope. I wanted to know about yourself.
I know. I feel really awkward about this.
Nah, in editing, it'll all be cut up and whatever, and it'll be good. I promise.
Okay. Can you